I'm Brad Heller with NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network. After the Cowboys' early exit from the playoffs this past season, owner Jerry Jones recently committed to being, quote, all in on the 2024 season. Linebacker Micah Parsons responded by saying he hopes Dallas acquires the players the team was missing, which includes getting nasty interior linemen and also giving running back Tony Pollard another shot. Despite eclipsing the 1,000-yard rushing mark for a second straight season, Pollard's yards per carry average dropped from 5.2 in 2022 to 4.0 in 2023. Meanwhile, veteran corner Patrick Peterson says he has no plans to retire heading into his 14th NFL season, but he's not sure if his career will continue with the Steelers. Peterson has 1 year left on a 2-year contract and is due to count $9.78 million against the salary cap in 2024. This has been NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it. Between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Go to hims.com/joy. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, and the process is 100% online. To start your free online visit, go to hims.com/joy. That's HIMS.com/JOY.
Six o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Titans putting the finishing touches on their staff, hiring a special teams coordinator, Colt Anderson. Anderson was on the Cincinnati Bengals staff with Brian Callahan since 2020. Anderson was the assistant special teams coach during his tenure with the Bengals. Tennessee went 2-1 over baseball's opening weekend, dominating the state of Texas with wins over both Baylor and Texas Tech, but fell on Saturday to Oklahoma 5-1. Tennessee, the only team in the country to have both baseball and softball ranked in the top 5. Another important date as the NFL calendar moves on. Today, if free agents with dead money are not re-signed, that cap hit becomes official, and the franchise transition tag window opens tomorrow. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Monday morning and a brand new week begins on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. We are brewed up by 8th and Rose, cultivating community by the cup. Your favorite retail bag is in every local Kroger and Whole Foods as well. At 8th and Rose, on your Monday grocery shopping list as you begin a frigid morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome in. We've got Tennessee hoops to discuss. We have got Tennessee staff openings. Vanderbilt potentially with a staff opening soon on their men's basketball coaching staff. Plus, the Titans rounding out their staff with a veteran offensive line coach from college football and a younger special teams coach who makes his debut as a first-time head of special teams in the National Football League. We've got Brad Hopkins filling in for Ramon Foster this morning. Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, I'm Will Bowling. 615-737-1045. How you jump in? Good morning, everyone. How are we?
We're good.
Good morning.
We're freezing, but other than that, I know you guys you came in with your beanie. You've got your beanie on still.
yeah.
I just
got
have
a
my hood
puffer.
up.
Yeah, that's right. I've got my puffer and a sweatshirt, so
Beanie and
stay
the
warm
hood.
out there. Because it's supposed to be 60 today, 61 or so.
Isn't that weird?
You never know.
That's what they say about Nashville. If you don't like the weather, just wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I went and played 18 holes yesterday in the morning.
Nice.
Of course you did.
And I got out at, it was 34 when I got to the golf course.
Ooh.
And there were 3 cars in the parking lot, which was outstanding.
Oh, yeah.
And then I immediately got out of the car and thought, what on earth have I done? And then I got warmed up a little bit and realized again that 40 degrees is an ideal golfing temperature because there's no one out there that's going to brave it at these like remote courses. If you go downtown or metro, like there will always be people. But
Right.
if you go like out of the outskirts a little bit, I saw 2 other groups the whole time I was there. I played 18 holes in just a little under 3 hours.
That's
It was great.
actually really good. If you can brave what some people think 40 is so cold, and it is, if you're not doing anything, but you're walking, I would assume.
I was riding.
Right? Oh, you were riding. Okay,
So I
but
didn't take that
still,
many steps, yeah.
you're taking swings,
How are you
Blood's
golfing
flowing.
with layered up? Because I know you had to have some clothes on.
I actually had like this jacket on that's like a more insulated, thinner jacket. I just layer. So you go like long sleeve shirt, hoodie, jacket.
Right, that doesn't affect your swing?
I mean, my swing's already bad enough anyway
gosh.
that it doesn't really matter.
I knew that was coming.
I know. I feel like you can't really.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
Swing in
I would have had
layers.
gloves on, right?
Oh yeah,
Maybe even a scarf.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just had the one glove. It was good.
Yeah. You're crazy. How about that?
No, a little bit. The girl that checked me in at the desk was like,
You're a
why are
maniac.
you
Yeah,
here?
exactly.
Well, I don't have to beat the crowd. That's for sure.
I would
Take
rather
my time.
like open up my spring of golfing because everyone like has to get back in it and like figure out how to play the sport again after winter. And so I would rather go through that horrible process and yell things at the sky without other people hearing them. So that's exactly what happened. Maybe there was one group around me that heard me just contemplating life and how much I stink at it. But
So that was your first outing of 2024 or what?
no, I played around New Year's because my family was in Florida around New Year's.
Oh, you're
But-
solo dolo
Yeah.
this weekend, weren't you?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Peyton was in Arizona.
Yep.
for her
Girlfriend was in
birthday.
Arizona. Had my mom's birthday Saturday.
Oh no way!
Happy birthday,
Oh
Mom.
my
Yeah.
gosh! Happy birthday, Mama Bowling.
How'd you bring that in? Take her to
We
dinner?
went to we got dinner in Cool Springs at a nice place. It was good.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
Very good.
I got to judge some dancing this weekend, so congrats to the new Nashville Cats dance team. They were really fun to watch, and really good job by Sissy and everybody over there who are heading up that dance team this year. They should be really fun to watch.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
I don't
It
know
is-
how much you were part of dance.
Man, I was like in my element. I was like, can I get out there?
How do you separate like a good dancer from a bad dancer? Like what makes a
question.
good
Yeah.
Good
dancer?
question.
So, obviously, skill set it has to be there. From everything from how your leaps are to your kicks. Are your kicks at a good level, right? And you can just kind of see if somebody has the right skill set the minute they step out there. Like if they're kind of off on their steps and they're behind the whole group, or if their arm placement isn't correct. Like it's a lot about the lines and everything of your arms and your legs and everything. And then appearance. Like appearance is a part of it. Like you got to look like, you're out there and you're ready to perform. So it's like a whole package for dancing. And you've got to be able to show it on your face. Like when you perform, you've got to have like the expressions and know when to do, the smiles and when to kind of be more like, serious. So it's an interesting skill set to have.
They don't call them cheerleaders, do they?
No, and
Yeah,
we don't want to be
exactly.
called
Yeah.
cheerleaders.
Especially at the professional level, when you're coaching, when you're
Yeah.
cheering on or entertaining a professional crowd, you want to be known as such, right? You don't want to be a cheerleader with pom-poms and just standing there.
And we use pom-poms sometimes for certain routines, but it's not like in a cheer way.
yeah.
Yeah. It was fun though, guys.
Yeah.
Really fun.
It hurts my hamstrings thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like doing the kicks that high and everything.
it was hurting mine seeing some of the girls because I'm clearly not 18, 19, 20.
I'm about to say, Will, as if you ever were able to do any of the things that they were able to do.
Oh no, but I've always been very like how do I put this? I'm very not flexible. I'm the most unflexible person that's ever existed. Which for like long, lanky distance runners, that's very common. Like none of us are flexible at all. Mm-hmm. So that was always a concern.
It's hard to work. You got to work at it too if you want to be flexible, and it's, I don't know if it's worth all the work.
A lot of deadlifts that have made that better now in my adult years. Some would say I have not yet reached my adult years, but that's fine. But, it was like I could not even get close to touching my toes in like high school and college when I was still running. Like it'd be like right below my knees would be able as far as I can go. It's terrible.
Brad, what'd you do? Anything? Chill?
No, we didn't do anything, and that was the good thing. I was by design, as a matter of fact. Got to go hang out with my parents a little bit. And I told you son's recovering from an appendectomy, so I had to bring him some crumb cake.
Wow.
Yeah. It's weird how they did that surgery, too, because they use robotic arms. The doctor never even touched him.
Yeah, you go in through your belly button.
Belly button.
I think that's how mine was, too.
Yeah. Liposcopically.
Oh.
It's so weird,
Worst
isn't it?
day ever.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah.
You wake up and you're like, did I just get ran over by a dump truck?
Mm-hmm. That's what he said. He was talking about his core movements being affected. Like, oh, my God.
It is.
The normal stuff is like excruciating. Sleeping on your back. I don't even think he's a back sleeper.
I was interning here in 2017 when I had my appendectomy.
Really?
I was out of work here for a week, and I was an intern on a radio show.
That's about the time you need, though, to be able to fully come back. And then you're still not strength-wise there yet.
Is that a young person situation? Because you're like the third person that told me that they had an appendectomy when they were in their 20s.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I was 19, 20? Yeah, I was 19. Yeah.
What was Skoronsky? Like, is he 20? 21? I don't even know how old Peter Skoronsky is, but he had one.
Yeah.
This year.
It's crazy.
And is it Bryson?
Colin had it. Yeah, he's 25. So
yeah.
It's weird.
Was able to go to Geodis Park, the new Nashville SC kit dropping over the weekend.
Okay.
Incredible crowd at Geodis over the weekend. They had food trucks out there. They had the new 615 kit, which is cool. They've got, I believe it was 35 different patches that represent different neighborhoods around Middle Tennessee that you can add to the jersey.
Oh, sweet.
Which was really cool. So I don't know if I'm going to get one for the area around here I grew up in or the area I live in now. It's the dilemma. I honestly might.
You could, or you could think, am I always going to live right? Like, is this something I'm going to...
That's fair.
You get what I'm saying?
It's fair.
Does Bellevue have a patch?
I believe they do.
Nice.
Well,
I want to
there
get
we
one
go.
of those. Right.
You got a lot of options. But I almost wore the new jersey in today, and they were nice enough to give me one with my name on it and everything, and almost wore it in today. But I'm going to save it for Wednesday, the first game day.
Perfect.
What about your co-host? You going to hook them up too?
What
about your co-host? You going to hook them up?
Yeah. I do not believe so.
I do not see any
Don't you know some people?
of that.
I do know some people. Not a lot of people, but a couple. I don't know if they want to know me, though, to be fair. 615-737-1045 is our number this morning. Going to get into a big discussion about Derrick Henry at 8:20 today, about what you would offer him if you had your chance to negotiate with the king. How aggressively do you pursue a reunion with Derrick Henry? We'll do that coming up at 8:20 this morning. Grant Ramey talks Tennessee Vanderbilt basketball. VolQuest.com writer at 7:20 this morning. How lopsided that was from a Tennessee perspective. Also sparks a conversation we'll have with Chris Lee, VandySports.com at 9:20 this morning. There is a lot of chatter out there about Vanderbilt head coach Jerry Stackhouse, and we have spoken about how rare it is to fire your coach in college hoops before the season is over. Is there any scenario where that happens at Vanderbilt after the weekend? In a weekend where Tennessee was tracking towards its largest SEC win ever and then put in freshmen for the last 10 minutes of Saturday's game. So we'll look at that game from both perspectives, both programs at 7:20 with Grant and at 9:20 with Chris Lee. Streaming live at 104.5 The Zone TV. You can see our beautiful faces there on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. Just search for at 104.5 The Zone. But coming up next, the Titans make a couple of staff moves over the weekend. Their special teams coach and a collegiate coach veteran on the offensive line. We'll tell you about it next.
Well, we were just talking about the cold temperatures out there this time of the year. Maybe your joints are feeling a little more achy and painful, and you're probably sick and tired of that. You dread the idea of possibly having surgery in the future to fix that. You don't need to, because you just need to call QC Kinetics today. Hey, it's Kayla Anderson, and the state of healthcare is always changing. So those old ideas, like I mentioned with the steroids or even surgery, they're no longer your only options. But regenerative medicine at QC Kinetics is transforming lives with innovative, non-surgical, drug-free treatments, and they deliver those lasting results. So let's say you're dealing with that knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain from arthritis. You have a lingering injury. Don't let this pain keep you from living your best life. QC Kinetics advanced state-of-the-art treatments harness and direct your body's natural ability to restore and repair damaged joint tissue, and that's for long-lasting results. So make 2024 the year you reclaim your mobility, reclaim your independence, walk and run and play and live without the danger of trauma or surgery. So call QC Kinetics now for a free consultation. It's simple, just 615-249-4024. Call them at 615-249-4024.
Monday morning at RKW is brewed by 8th and Rose, Tremone, Kayla, and Will with Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson. I'm Will Bowling. Titans made a couple more additions to their staff over the weekend. We've got a full-time coach that has been added and a full-time assistant that is going to, I think, be a sleepy good pick for the Titans from Kansas. Not often that you were going to Kansas for good coaches a couple of years back, but that is certainly the case now under Lance Leipold. We'll get to that coming up in just a minute. But, Kayla, you know Colt Anderson, the new special teams coach of the Tennessee Titans, who comes over after a few years as an assistant in Cincinnati.
Yeah. So interesting in terms of just obviously the connection there is with Brian Callahan and his staff. Being there for the last 4 years with the Cincinnati Bengals. I know Colt from when I covered him back in my Montana sports broadcasting days. So he played with a favorite of so many former Tennessee Titan, Mark Mariani, who did some really good things here in Tennessee and still lives here today. So I covered both those guys. And Colt was always a guy he's from Butte, Montana. And this is geographically different from a lot of people who don't know what the heck goes on up there. But very like blue-collared city, very small, like mining town, grew up just working his butt off and made the team, obviously, with Montana. He went there and was a captain there, really solid player for them, detailed-orientated type of player, was not drafted. And remember that he got signed to the practice squad where he worked really hard for the Vikings and kind of learned the ins and outs of, the NFL, and then got a gig with Philadelphia. And I remember when I was still in Montana and we cover a lot of the Grizz that play in the NFL and we get to talk to them and sometimes they'd come back and we'd have them in studio. And I remember having Colt in studio after his really good season in 2011, I think it was, for the Eagles. I mean, heck of a special teamer, probably like Pro Bowl status that year. He unfortunately hurt. I think he had an ACL injury, but heck of a player. They loved him over there in Philly. Like the fans loved this guy, and he was just a special teams player. So he didn't have like some long, crazy career in the NFL, but I know whenever he was at a place, he worked incredibly hard, very detail-orientated, like I said, and just relates to people, right? He's a hard worker and he relates to, anybody in this league, whether you've made it right away or you're climbing your way up and you're trying to make a spot.
Special teamers are the unheralded heroes, basically, because this is the position game.
Right.
Right? You're talking about guys that scream down the field and cover teams, those guys that are trying to get the ball back, in essence, sometimes. But for Colt to have played 9 years in the league, and like you mentioned, Kayla, at that high level, I'm sure that that's going to resonate with the players that he's actually coaching.
The Cincinnati special teams unit was good while Colt Anderson was there. And with 4 years of NFL experience, he's been the assistant special teams coach there for the Bengals from 2020 to 2023. So in those 4 seasons, Phil Gosselin ranks Cincinnati special teams as 12th in the NFL in 2020 and 2021, 26th in the NFL in 2022, and 8th this past season in 2023. One other thing I think is interesting about him is he was a volunteer coach at his alma mater in high school for 1 season before going to Cincinnati to be their assistant special teams coach. So this is another guy who Brian Callahan is hiring who is just coaching high schoolers within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Back in 2019. I mean, I was starting here in 2019. That was not that long ago. And interesting kind of some of the high school football influence and that teacher mentality that I feel like you're getting on this staff.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think of that. And yeah, he had that stint back home trying to get into coaching. Clearly, you've got to work your way up in that too. But yeah, the relationships nowadays, even when you're in the NFL, I feel like you've still got to know the new age player because you're getting those young players in at 21. I mean, heck, 20 sometimes, straight from college where there's money involved now and there is probably a level of still trying to get to maturity. you don't have time to get to that level. When you're in the NFL, you've got to get to that level, but you've got to be able to, relate to your players still. And if they're a little immature, because maybe this is just the new generation, you've got to find a way to get them to buy in, but also be like, hey, I understand your new generation, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why you see Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick still looking for jobs, if in fact they're trying to search for jobs.
And
Pete
Mike
Carroll,
Vrabel.
Yeah. Well, Vrabel's still a youngish
Right.
type coach, but what you're talking about is that gap between generations that sometimes don't allow relatability to be, something somewhat of a strength.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about a younger guy, somebody that can understand and speaks the language of the guys that he's coaching, that's huge. It's huge in their development. I'm not saying that everybody that's in the teaching position needs to be, just a arm's length away from whoever it is that they're teaching, but it helps to be able to understand how they're thinking. If you're seeing the evolution of an industry that is featuring a lot younger players nowadays, it helps to have coaches that are either flexible, adaptable,
right,
and then can be bilingual.
Yeah.
It's interesting with the way the Titans are set up special teams wise, and as good as Ryan Stonehouse is at flipping the field, could you make the argument this is one of the tougher special teams jobs in the NFL, just considering how much ground you have to cover as a special teamer when Ryan Stonehouse can kick it 70 yards?
That's just effort, right? Guys kicking at 70 yards, how fast are you getting down there in position to make a tackle?
Mm-hmm.
If you have, like you just mentioned, Pro Bowlers or Pro Bowl types on that side of the football, that means they're giving tremendous effort. They're setting the standard, so to speak.
Right.
And how huge is that when you're a defense that's now looking at the offense with their heels on the goal line? You see me, or something like that, or working in manageable a position on the field where they have 70, 80 yards to go before they hit pay dirt. That's tremendous versus you floundering kicks and you're at midfield trying to get some footing. That sucks.
And look, it's a detailed job, right? I mean, we saw when you mess up on details, you get your punter, your Pro Bowl punter, you get him hurt. You get him, done for the season. I mean, the details go into that. You're right, Brad. The effort, which I know, Colt had no other choice but to play with effort, being undrafted, being a guy that's, from a little school in Montana. So I think really getting your players on the same page in special teams is so crucial for this team. It's such an important unit that has not been that good over the past couple of years. And yes, Stoney's been good, and, Nick Folk was great last year. But special teams as a whole needs to be much better. And we don't know necessarily who the kicker is going to be, by the way, or long snapper.
It's one thing is you said Butte, Montana is full of like hard workers,
Really
the
tough.
blue collar people.
Yeah.
Well, that's what special teamers are.
Yep.
If you think about that, you got an offensive, defensive starter. They already have an establishment of who they are on the team.
Right.
And backups usually play special teams, because those guys are on the last ticket before they're out of the league or not on a roster. And sometimes those guys do make a check being on special teams because they're not the 22 starters that are either on offense or defense. So those are the grinders. Those are the guys that understand that, hey, look, I could be out of here in a minute or replaced in a minute, especially how this thing goes in the NFL. But those are the grinders, man, on special teams.
The Titans also added an assistant offensive line coach over the weekend in a story first reported by footballscoop.com as Scott Fuchs, a college coaching veteran with more than 3 decades of experience, is going to make the jump to the NFL. This is a guy who has accompanied Lance Leipold to each of his last 2 stops in college football, working with him at Buffalo and for the past 3 seasons at the University of Kansas, where they have had unprecedented success there. Former All-American at North Dakota State, coached at Wyoming, Southern Illinois, Division II powerhouse Grand Valley State, and also for the Bison. And yes, it is Bison up there, not Bisons, like it is in Nashville for North Dakota State. Brad, those assistant position coaches, it feels like sometimes those guys are around you as players as much as anyone else on staff. But what is the value in having a guy with 3 decades of college coaching experience coming into an offensive line room that is going to likely feature a lot of young players this upcoming season?
I think they affect the details. And what I mean by that is an offensive line coach has a lot of responsibility implementing the game plan. He's working with guards, centers, and tackles, more like the team effort, the unit effort, versus an assistant that's then reminding you about your footwork, that's looking at you more detailed than, say, the offensive line coach, and can then maybe even pull you to the side sometimes and say, here's your hand placement. Here's your pad level. Here's your gap between guys on the offensive line. You're way too wide. You're creating a crevice there that doesn't necessarily need to be there. He's reminding you of those little things that you need to do to be working in unison with the guys up front. So, while his job may be even to help you recognize issues on film as you're all watching it together, it's the details that I think the assistants help you with. Now, I will say that through most of my career until Mike Munchak was given the offensive line coach job specifically, he was my assistant offensive line coach, and I leaned on him more than I leaned on anybody that we had that was the offensive line coach. So I firsthand understand the uniqueness of that situation. And for me, it was a guy that I played with, so it was easier than to listen to what he was having to say to me because I understood the experience that he brought to the table. But when you're also, developing trust in a guy that knows technique, you said 30 years at the college level, and more specifically, at the college level, Will, you're teaching.
Yep.
Because those guys don't know that you're dealing with high school kids when they come in every single year that, don't know. I almost cussed. Don't know crap. Stuff from Shinola. You know what I'm saying?
You're a pro, though.
They don't know
you see what I'm saying?
Shiano.
They don't know from Shinola. So that's the job of a guy that's been in the college ranks for a long time.
This is another one of those, coaches, and obviously not the full-time offensive line coach because you've got one of the best to do it in Bill Callahan. But I like how they're kind of evening things out here, too. You got a guy who's been primarily in the NFL for the last several seasons with Bill Callahan. Mm-hmm. And then you've got a guy that's really kind of cut his teeth in the college game. And you're right, that kind of understands the development part of it, where Bill Callahan can maybe focus on certain things. He can focus on some other things with the development. And I think just relating to, again, the new age player, really good resume, obviously, that he has. So this will be fun. I wonder if he will be able to relate a little with Mr. Dylan Radins from their North Dakota State alumni status there.
Yeah, they remember where to get the good hamburgers and that kind of stuff. I'm sure
exactly.
there'll be a relationship
Bison
there.
burgers.
The bison burgers.
Oh, bison
Those
burgers.
are so good, by the way.
It's interesting, Brad, when you watch this Titans offensive line, is it as simple as they just don't have the players? Is there a common theme between mistakes they are making? Like when Scott Fuchs and Bill Callahan come in and look at this team, what is the coaching point you give this offensive line to make them better players?
Know what you're doing. Period. Know what you're doing. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you get out of position. When you get out of position, you get beat. We know that this is a technique-oriented unit when you're talking about an offensive line because footwork, pad level, spacing, all of that has to be on par for you to have success. But let's just throw thinking in the mix because you're not necessarily comfortable with the plays that are called, understanding the responsibility, because defenses nowadays, they don't just stand there in front of you in a vanilla look and say, hey, block me.
They're attacking.
It doesn't look that. No. Well, they're all attacking,
right,
but you don't know who's attacking, Kayla.
Exactly.
The guy standing over you might not necessarily be the guy you're blocking.
Right.
You could be sliding one way. You could be gap protecting one way. There are so many different things that you can be doing up front because the defense's job is to befuddle you, confuse you, and get you out of position. But if you know what you're doing, you're not thinking. You're just reacting to what you see. You remember how the quarterbacks are always saying, or they're always teaching quarterbacks, just take what the defense gives you. Well, it's the same thing in essence for offensive linemen. Take what that defensive front is giving you. Defensive front is not just a 4-down lineman or 3-down lineman. Throw the linebackers in the mix too because they're rushing the passer almost as often, or they're attacking gaps almost as often. So if you're comfortable with what you're seeing because you know the game plan, because you've had a chance to get yourself acclimated with the offense that you're running, you're doing less thinking, you're doing more reacting, and you have better success.
So one thing I think they've been missing, and I want your opinion on this since you played and you understand, what you need in terms of this line and the attitude, is I didn't see the nastiness. I haven't seen the nastiness from this group of particular players. And I'm not saying they don't have it in them. Some of them they don't. I also didn't see last year specifically with Ben Jones gone and him being the quarterback of the line and center and just that veteran, experience. I like Daniel Brunskill. I think he has that experience. Chris Hubbard, when he was here, unfortunately got hurt. There's not a lot of veteran leadership, and I don't see the nastiness. And I think those are two things you're going to have on this line if it's going to improve.
Can't be nasty if you're thinking.
Yep.
It all correlates.
Exactly.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, if I can be confident, I can be aggressive is what you're talking about. The nastiness is being aggressive, controlling the line of scrimmage. If I'm not thinking not one single bit about what my responsibilities are to do.
You're right.
So when I can ball this thing up and start smacking you in the mouth because I know where you're going to be, I know what I'm supposed to be doing in this offense, I know what I'm supposed to be doing on this particular play, it allows me to play more confidently. It's hard to be aggressive when you're not confident. And you're not confident in what you do because you're thinking sometimes like, man, what play was that we're calling? What's the snap? You got to avoid the pre-snap penalties. In other words, know what the ball is being snapped on. You know what I mean? Don't jump off sides.
Which they had issues with.
Know how you're going to block a certain look. In other words, if a guy's standing right over me on my outside shoulder, I know what my footwork is required to block that guy. If I know a guy's really wide outside of me, then I know what my footwork requires for me to be able to block that guy. And then I can block what I see, be in the proper position, and not get over my skis and then cause a problem. And that's a wrinkle effect. Because while you might have 4 dudes on the offensive line that are blocking their butts off and doing a tremendous job, it just takes one to have a problem, and all of a sudden the whole thing breaks down and the quarterback's on his back.
It's a good point. And
Really good
it's
point.
exactly what a couple of our favorite Pro Football Focus writers said with us a few weeks ago and said, look, the goal of playing offensive line in this league is to not have one guy that ruins it for the other 4. Just if you don't have one guy who's a complete disaster, you'll probably be around league average, even if you don't have a stud. Like, the first goal for this offensive line is to just not have one guy who's a turnstile. Because it doesn't matter how good Peter Skronsky is at left guard if you get left tackle wrong again.
Yeah, when your car's out of alignment, how it pulls one way or the other. You got 3 tires that are doing they're doing what they're supposed to do, and that one tire is just pulling things in the wrong direction. So you're compensating also for the mistakes that one that one guy is making. You see what I'm saying? You're having to make the adjustment. Hey, Jim's over here getting beat like a drum. We're gonna have to help him out. You know what I'm saying? So now everybody else is out of position because you're trying to fix the issues that one guy may be having.
And they definitely had that last year. Definitely.
615-737-1045 is our number. Coming up next, before the NBA All-Star Game, Adam Silver told TNT that he thought we were going to see a good game. Well, we didn't. And one team scored 200 points. If you were watching, I wasn't, but we'll recap it for you in case you were like me. Coming up next.
Guys, it's a new year. Low T Center can make it a great one, though, okay? If you've been feeling tired, grumpy, have noticed a lack of motivation and drive, have weight gain and lost some muscle mass, these could all be signs of low testosterone levels. At Low T Center, they make it easy to get your levels checked. Just a simple blood test, and with their on-site lab, you'll get your results back in about 25 minutes. Low T Center is not your typical doctor's office, okay? It's a concierge medicine for men. Their physicians specialize in treating low testosterone and have been exclusively treating men for years with most health insurance accepted. And they have affordable and convenient treatment options, including physician monitored self-inject treatments that ship directly to your home each month. So there's no need to drive to the center for weekly visits. Right now at Low T Center, it's only $25 to get your T levels tested. Make your health and quality of life a priority and make it a great year. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointments online today. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
Monday morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will is brewed by 8th and Rose, 615-737-1045. The number? Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you. Did anyone watch the NBA All-Star game last night?
I caught a little bit of it, and then I realized, well, it's the same as it always is, but even more scoring.
That's a little bit of your life you'll never get back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you know what? It's by design. It's not the game of old where you're talking about offense and defense. It's about offense.
100%.
This has become more of a celebration of what basketball is versus a competition.
Yeah.
So if you're watching it in the lens of, man, let's watch two teams really getting after it. No, that's not the case, because if defense tries, now you got a game. But that's not what anybody wants. You know,
Well,
these
Shaq
guys,
did.
yeah, right.
Shaq's like,
Yeah,
can
right.
we
Silver-
see a little bit more?
Adam Silver really wanted a good game. And
Right. Well, what's a good game? Is a good game a competitive situation, or is a good game an entertaining situation? Entertaining me, and obviously a lot of offense, a lot of shooting, a lot of scoring, and putting effort into a game in the middle of the season before it really starts to kind of turn the corner, not in the middle of the season, but you know what I'm talking about, before we really start focusing on March Madness and the finals and all this other stuff. These teams, when we talk about an industry that considers load management part of the metric, they're not going to go out in the All-Star game and just and play lights out. So if you are watching the game expecting an NBA Finals with, you know, the game's best, you're sadly mistaken.
Well, yeah, you had 97 three-point attempts by the Eastern side and 71 three-point attempts by the Western side. My goodness.
it's crazy. The final score was 211 to 186. Adam Silver did say before the game, and after months reportedly of the NBA focusing on ways to make this be a more competitive product, said before the game, I think we're going to see a good game. And then after the game, was visibly annoyed at how bad and uncompetitive the game was, and said, and of the Eastern Conference All-Stars, you scored the most points. Congrats. And that was it.
That's by design how the winner's supposed to be comprised in an All-Star game of that fashion.
They
Because-
also got rid of the Elam ending, which I did not like. The Elam ending where going into the fourth quarter, there's a number
Oh.
that the first team who gets to that score
Oh,
wins.
yeah.
I forgot about that.
That they do in the
Yeah.
TBT, the basketball tournament. I think the NBA All-Star game is the worst All-Star game in sports. There is the least amount of effort in this, and I think at this point, at least the NFL has come around on the fact that it's not in their best interest to play a legitimate football game anymore. So they've pivoted to something else that's entertaining and makes sense, the way the NHL did, about 10 years ago with a 3-on-3 tournament-style All-Star game that they do?
And they still do the skills stuff leading up
Yeah.
to it in the NBA, like the three-point shot. They're still doing the dunk contest, which has obviously reduced in quality from
Gate
what it
City's
used to be.
own Mac McClung with his
Yeah.
second straight.
Okay.
win.
The reason why the NFL got away from having a game like you're talking about, the traditional game we used to have, is because to play defense and to give effort like that, someone's going to get hurt.
Of course.
That's just the way it is. And no one wants to play in an all-star game and go out there and get hurt. Because playing against the best, you have to give that kind of effort to defend people of that caliber, right? Well, the same thing in basketball. Basketball takes effort to defend.
Right.
And they're not going to go out there and press. And they're not going to go out there and get up in people's face and really, because first off, that's a mentality. I got to get my mind right to play defense in basketball, right? That means I'm going to shut you down. You're not getting shots. I'm boxing you out. I'm attacking the glass. I'm doing all these things. No. Nobody's prescribing to that when you're doing an all-star game, so to speak. This is a
Right.
break in the middle of the season that then kind of glorifies the talents of the game's the game's best players, right? But they're not going to go out there and play lights out because eventually someone's going to get hurt. Imagine this. Imagine your team's on a nice little run. They're doing some things. They go to All-Star weekend, and then your favorite player blows a hamstring out trying to defend somebody in an All-Star game. How ticked off are you? You took them out of the lineup because of what? It didn't even count for anything. So it's like they're trying to manage the effort that they're giving, but then you see 200 to 186 point differentials, and no one wants to see that. So you just might as well just scrap that kind of game or even go into it thinking differently than what we were, that we want to see Game 4 of the NBA Finals. That's not
Right.
going to happen between these teams that are playing against each other in an All-Star game.
Well, because I'll still give the NBA credit for the All-Stars they get, right? Because it's not at the end of the season where they're in playoffs, so that you're missing half the All-Stars that get selected actually for this team. This is still a very big honor, I think, for a lot of these players to be selected to an All-Star team. I think the NBA takes that part of it seriously. But when it comes to the game, it's almost like the opposite. You're right. It's just out there, shooting, chucking threes and not playing defense, which I get the reason for it. But you've got all these all-stars that are actually coming and people are buying into it that are the fans. But what can you do different? I think that's got to pivot at some point.
Give me Curry and Ionescu all day long.
Oh, my gosh, that's so fun.
Give me that. Give me Dame Lillard versus Ice Trade a Game or whoever in a three-point contest. Give me Matt McClung on a dunk contest over Shaq all day, because I'm seeing exactly what these guys are able to do, but not in a situation where I'm expecting a game per se between these two teams in the middle of a season when we're already talking about players needing to play a minimum of 65 games to get bonuses and stuff. Come on.
Yep.
615-737-1045 is our number. It does feel like baseball is the last meaningful All-Star game that's left.
I love it.
So the nature of the MLB All-Star game is that you can rotate pitchers every 2 innings and every pitcher gets to play.
Yeah.
And you're not hurting yourself trying to put together at bats. And plus, I mean, you go that long without hitting, you're going to get in the cage and you're going to need to take some swings anyway. So you might as well do them against one of the best pitchers in the league.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between baseball, basketball, and football? The physicality
Absolutely.
of it.
Yeah, of course.
Period.
Right.
Because unless I'm charging the plate coming down the third baseline, I don't expect to touch you at all.
You're right.
The only time I'm going to get hurt is possibly getting beamed in the ribs in the batter's box, or something like that. But I'm not necessarily matched up against the guy next to me that's playing on the opposing team, and we're going to get after it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and even like Will said, even the pitchers that have to do that, they only do it for an inning or two.
Yep.
615-737-1045. Coming up next, NFL.com puts teams ranked from 1 to 8 on the biggest Super Bowl windows. And the team that is ranked 8th is completely ridiculous. We'll tell you who that is next. Hey, it's Will Bowling. Do you or someone close to you find it maddening to hear conversation when there's background noise? Maybe it's while you're dining at your favorite restaurant or even watching your favorite team play on the hardwood in a crowded arena. Well, if so, I want to introduce you to my friends at Brentwood Hearing Center. With 5 doctors of audiology, state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment, and the most recent hearing device technology, they'd like to help you get off the sidelines and back in the game of better hearing. And with over 85 years of experience from their convenient location just off of I-65 in Brentwood, they tailor a hearing solution to each individual patient. And look, we all know that one family member, you're probably already thinking of them right now, who always says, I just don't hear the way I could maybe a couple of years ago. And that family member can come in all shapes and sizes, all ages. Well, if so, you need to give Brentwood Hearing Center a call today for yourself or for that family member at 615-377-0420 or visit them online at BrentwoodHearingCenter.com. Conveniently located right off of I-65 in Brentwood, 615-377-0420. Let the madness be on the court in March and not when you're in crowded places. Brentwood Hearing Center online at BrentwoodHearingCenter.com. That's better hearing, better life.
7 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. The Titans putting finishing touches on their staff hiring special teams coordinator Colt Anderson. Anderson was on the Cincinnati Bengals staff with Brian Callahan since 2020. Anderson was the assistant special teams coordinator during his time with the Bengals. Tennessee went 2-1 over baseball's opening weekend, dominating the state of Texas with wins over both Baylor and Texas Tech, but fell on Saturday to Oklahoma 5-1. Tennessee is the only team in the country to have both baseball and softball ranked in the top 5. Another important deadline on the NFL calendar this week. Today, if free agents with dead money are not re-signed to their teams, their cap hits become official, and the franchise tag / transition tag window opens tomorrow. Get ready for that. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
– 7 a.m. in Nashville and a beautiful morning in the Music City. Welcome in to a hot, fresh new hour of Ramon, Kayla, and Will. We are RKW, brewed up by 8th and Rose. Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you. Robert Walsh making the show happen. You can join us at 615-737-1045. We'll talk a little bit of SEC hoops coming up in 15 minutes as Tennessee takes down Vanderbilt over the weekend, leading by as many as 40?
43, I think.
Oof.
Hi.
Goodness. Wow. At home in the artist formerly known as Thompson Bowling Arena. Great. Ramey will talk about that with us. And Chris Lee of VandySports.com joins us at 9:20 this morning with rumors circulating about Jerry Stackhouse's future in Nashville. Looks like change could potentially be on the horizon. And we'll ask Chris at 9:20 just how close Vanderbilt is to potentially making a change, or if there is any chance a change could come before the season is over at this point. Streaming live at 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. NFL.com puts down 8 teams that have the biggest Super Bowl windows. And I don't know if they meant to include the New York Jets, but they did. Number 8. Are the New York Jets in a Super Bowl window?
So on the series yesterday, we had a survey up. The 4 teams, whether it was AFC or NFC, that could actually pose the biggest problems for the Chiefs in a three-peat.
Okay.
I said the Jets were one of the teams that could do it. If you were watching teams last year, and when you watched the trade for Aaron Rodgers going to New York and you didn't move the Jets up immediately in your rankings, then you're a liar. Because I guarantee you did. But 4 plays into that season, he was out. The Jets floundered because of the quarterback issues that they continue to have. But they still had a championship defense, okay? They had one side of the ball shoring up. The other side of the ball still continued to struggle. So I'm assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to be healthy for the 2024 campaign, and that same conversation still exists. A guy that's won multiple MVPs, recently, mind you, and is still a difference-making quarterback. Now, we know that he carries a lot more weight than just an average quarterback because his influence, even bringing some of the staff together in New York, was evident. So I definitely would agree with them moving the Jets up in the line, just like I would agree with making the Bengals another contender too, even though they weren't this year. You know, with Joe Burrow being healthy, coming back into the lineup, the team on the AFC side that's had the most success against the Chiefs, I would definitely say they're on that ladder too, as far as teams that could pose the biggest problems for the Chiefs in getting to the 3rd Super Bowl. So, yes, the Jets at number 8, it makes sense to me.
I will push back. And I will push back by saying I bought into the fact that Aaron Rodgers was there last year. He brought over a lot of people he believed could, his guys, I could say, could help, this Jets team get to the next level, get to the Super Bowl. And anytime you bring Aaron Rodgers on your team, absolutely, you have to really give them some credit in terms of this could be a team that could go all the way, because you're right. The defense has been solid. The defense is, in my eyes, close to championship level type of play, and they have been. They've got the Sauce Gardners, right? They have not really taken a step back. But offensively, when they lost Aaron Rodgers last year, you saw quickly that even a guy like Zach Wilson, who they kind of gave up on but then gave the reins back to, he couldn't do anything with that offense. And you got a guy like Garrett Wilson, who's incredibly talented. It'd be great to see what he can do with Aaron Rodgers in a season. But let me tell you something about that offensive line. That offensive line is the line that got Aaron Rodgers hurt on 4 snaps into the season. That offensive line is ran by Keith Carter, who was once here with the Tennessee Titans, who I don't feel like did a great job with the offensive line here either. And if they're going to do anything at a caliber level this next year, even with Aaron Rodgers healthy, they better fix the offensive line. And that is easier said than done sometimes. And yes, it gives you hope that Aaron Rodgers will be back, but he didn't get a year younger. And I think I'm still going to have to be in prove-it mode for me to get back on the train, even with Aaron Rodgers, for those Jets to be at that level.
Any team that has offensive line issues is in the same conundrum that you just mentioned. I agree with that 100%. I think Mekhi Becton basically was battling with his weight. That affected his technique. That affected everything else he was doing at left tackle. And no one was saying Elijah Vera Tucker for president. These are 2 first-round picks in 2020 and 2021 that the Jets invested heavily in to help keep the integrity of that pocket. And it didn't work out because we saw Aaron Rodgers, we saw Trevor Siemian, we saw Zach Wilson all go through the same problems, and I get it. But they still have, like you just mentioned, Garrett Wilson. They still have Breece Hall. They still have got a vaunted defense that can give them a championship. So if they've shored up their protection issues and they can start winning the line of scrimmage with the big bodies up front, then I would say the Jets are probably a team that contends.
And it's interesting when you think about Robert Saleh. Can he have a Zach Taylor kind of renaissance, and maybe not even renaissance, but a Zach Taylor style jump as soon as they get the O-line to just not be a disaster? Because people were ready to run Zach Taylor out of town in Cincinnati before Joe Burrow was able to stand upright for a full season, and they went to a Super Bowl. It can turn on its head quickly, but I'm not sure with the dynamics within that locker room and things we hear about the different forces and the different voices trying to pull guys in different directions within that facility. I'm not sure the Jets as an organization have flushed out the toxicity that they would need in order to compete in that division. And that is a difficult division. And I think New England's going to get better, maybe not right away, but New England's going to finally have a quarterback, which will be the first time they've had one that's decent since Tom Brady. I know Mac Jones went to a Pro Bowl as a rookie, but after he was found out a little bit, they at least get to have the new hope of a rookie quarterback. Obviously, Josh Allen is Josh Allen, and you got a Miami team that feels like they got closer to being a legitimate contender in the AFC East. So, to me, the interesting part about that division is just simply somebody's got to be the 4th team in that. The way Cincinnati was this past season in the AFC North is the one team out, because that division could easily get 3 teams in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, but Cincinnati, by example, is almost similar to the Jets because Joe Burrow didn't finish the season just like Aaron Rodgers didn't finish the season because of the same issues. Orlando Brown thought he was a left tackle, even though he was a right tackle in Baltimore.
That's right.
Got paid to go to Kansas City as a left tackle. They let him go, basically, to Cincinnati because if he was worth the salt, they'd have re-signed him. Same situation with Jonah Williams at right tackle. Jonah Williams is a free agent this year. Why? Because people feel that he's expendable. So the tackles have the same compromising issue that the Jets have, and they both got their quarterbacks hurt, and it affected their seasons. But yet we're still talking about the Bengals glowingly. Mm-hmm. I'd take Breece Hall over Joe Mixon.
Well, and they might not keep Joe Mixon there either this year.
Yeah, they keep saying that. They keep saying that. But, yeah, I don't know. Joe says otherwise. Don't be talking about me going someplace else.
Right? And I just wonder if you compare the two, I don't know, maybe it's the coaching that I've liked better on the Cincinnati side. But then again, look, they've lost some coaches too now. Because the New York Jets just always have just the drama surrounding them. I think that kind of crap gets caught up in honestly what happens over there. like before a season, during a season, whatever it is, I feel like there's always stuff surrounding them that takes away from the actual game that they're supposed to be playing there every Sunday.
Don't do it, Kayla. Don't watch the game like a New York fan.
But I feel like it's always like that there.
And the thing is, though, that's the way they approach it. Because, as a matter of fact, Bill Leckis is my host, and I talked to him yesterday.
Am I a New
said,
York fan at heart?
I said, why do you guys always seem cynical when it comes to rooting for your teams? Oh, we can't do this. Oh, the struggle is real. Oh, we stink. They do that all the time, trying to find the glass half empty in every situation, whether you're an Islanders fan or a Mets fan or a Yankees fan or a Jets fan. Watch the game like you really hope for them to do something. Positive reinforcement can go a long way instead of always talking about how crappy things are.
Oh, that New York market.
Good night.
615-737-1045. We'll get to your phone calls coming up later here in hour one. After we talk next to VolQuest and On Three's Grant Ramey. Where does Saturday's Tennessee win over Vanderbilt ranked among the most lopsided games that he has covered in a good while on the Tennessee beat? And when freshmen play as much as they did, what are the meaningful takeaways for Tennessee on Saturday in a game that seemed void of them? We'll talk to Grant Ramey about that next. Hey, it's Will Bowling here for my friends at Lee Company. You hear me talk all the time about how Lee Company is all you need for your home. Well, hey, they're also all you need for your facility as well. That's right. Their expert technicians on the facilities team have you covered, not just for HVAC, but for plumbing and electrical too. They are literally your one-stop shop to fix anything in your facility, in your home, that's not working the way it's supposed to. From healthcare facilities to industrial, everything in between, Lee Company is available 24/7, 365 to keep your building running efficiently. They're all you need, and they're going to help you with all different types of facilities. That means you got to write down this phone number, 615-567-1000. Easy to remember, 615-567-1000. They're open 24/7, 365, all day and all night to help you out the second something stops working. You can also contact them online at leecompany.com. Make an appointment there. Their website is great, leecompany.com/promotions, where you can find some of their great offers. 615-567-1000. That's Lee Company, all you need. Monday morning on RKW is brewed up by 8th and Roast with Brad Hopkins in for Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson. I'm Will Bowling. Tennessee with a lopsided victory over Vanderbilt over the weekend. At one point, it was 35-8. VolQuest Grant Ramey joins us right now. Grant, did you bring a book? Did you bring knitting needles? Like that, you could have gotten a lot done during the second half on Saturday.
That's like the sports writer's dream. The game's decided by halftime, and you don't. There's no chance of. I mean, when it's a 41-point game with 13 minutes left, there's not much chance that they can mess this up and let Vanderbilt back into this game. So I need more of those and less of what we've had the rest, basically the entire season.
It's only fair that you get that. The same year there was a 10 p.m. Eastern tip-off earlier this year. I know that game was in Central Time, but still, this is your offsetting just gift from the basketball.
Well, it's kind of ironic that it was Vanderbilt that this happened, because last season at Vanderbilt was that Ty Lawrence corner three at the Horn, and when you're a sports writer trying to publish a game story at the Horn, and that happens, you got to change a lot of stuff, and it's like paralysis. You're just sitting there like trying to figure out what to do next, and then the very next game was Missouri in Knoxville, and they hit that like 35-footer at the Horn, and we're just sitting there like, it happened again. What do we do? So it was nice to it's nice to avoid those situations, let alone not have to deal with them back to back.
Grant Ramey of VolQuest and On 3, our guest. Grant, when freshmen are in the game that haven't played in weeks with about 12 minutes left in the second half, there aren't a ton of maybe substantial takeaways, at least for the starters and for the main rotation. What stood out to you, and what stood out to Rick Barnes after this one Saturday?
Cam Carr's going to shoot the basketball, which I love. That guy sees a green light at every turn, and I love it. Shoot your shot, young man. He's good defensively. He's long. He's athletic. He's going to block shots. He has crazy length. I think they love his upside, so it was good to see him get some extended minutes. Freddie DeLeon, we hadn't seen him really probably since he played at Vanderbilt 3 weeks ago. So it's good to get him some extended minutes. Cade Phillips, he had a really good summer and impressed some people, and played early in the season, and he kind of lost his way a little bit, and it feels like he's kind of regained some, found his footing again, I guess, and kind of worked his way back in the rotation. And part of that's because J.P. Estrella's been out the last 3 games with a left leg issue of the other freshman forward. So Cade has benefited from that, but and more than anything, just to get Dalton Connect off his feet and not have to play 35 minutes. I mean, he checked out with, 12, 13, 14 minutes left. I can't remember what it was. And he put a towel around his neck, and Rob Lewis was sitting next to me there watching the game. And he said, if it's me, that's it for Dalton Connect. He's not coming back in. And that's how it played out. He was done from there. And I think everybody in the main rotation who plays more than 20 minutes a game played under their minutes average against Vanderbilt in terms of what they're averaging for the season. So at this point in the season, especially when you're turning around going to Missouri on Tuesday, it's a good opportunity to, A, play those young guys and get them some extended run, and to get your main guys off their feet and let them rest a little bit. That's really valuable this time of year.
Grant Ramey of VolQuest joining us this morning on RK Dub. And Grant, Rick Barnes emphasizing after the game, and speaking of some of those young players, he was really impressed how they truly tried to play the game the right way when they were out there. How big is that this time of year when you're blowing out a team like Vanderbilt, who is, a cross-state rival, at least that's what Vandy feels, to be able to get that effort to the last buzzer?
It's huge because, and Rick Barnes admitted this not too long ago during a postgame, he's not great at compliments. That's not what comes naturally to him. He's much more of a critic, and he's going to be a perfectionist. He's going to demand that you do everything as perfectly as it can be done. So for him to come in there after the game and say that he was really, really pleased with those guys for playing the game the right way, I think is what he said, and not treating it like garbage time, and not trying to go out there and show, and just trying to do what you're capable of doing, and playing hard defensively, and putting in an effort, and not forcing stuff offensively. For as critical as he is, for him to come in there and praise those young guys the way he did. Now, also, Jerry Stackhouse, he pulled his starters, too, and I don't really know if it was as much punishment as much as it clearly wasn't their night, and it wasn't going well, so he put in the back end of his bench as well, it seemed like. So it's not like they were going up against Vandy's main rotation or starters or whatever. But for those young guys to go in there and to do what Rick said, to play the game the right way, to play defensively, to put in effort, that goes a long ways towards whatever they can become and the steps they're trying to take. I mean, a freshman season in college basketball, if you're not like a one-and-done five-star kind of guy who's got his eyes on the NBA draft, you're trying to learn how hard it is to play at this level, how hard you have to play to compete at this level, how consistently hard you have to play. And that's a tough learning curve to get through. So it sounds like those guys, it seems like those guys are taking steps in the right direction. And it points to bright futures for a lot of those guys.
Second time in SEC play this season where the Vols have had 5 players in double figures. You talk about the balance you're seeing a little more on this team here down the stretch. How impressed have you been with that specifically?
Yeah, and they got to have it. I mean, Dalton Connect's a guy that can go out and score 39 and win you a basketball game. But Tennessee's at their best when it's Dalton Connect and Jonas Adu playing a two-man game, or it's Dalton Connect and Zakai Ziegler scoring, or it's Dalton Connect and it's Josiah Jordan-James hitting threes. Like Dalton's an elite basketball player, but Dalton needs some help. And if it's 5 guys, that's great. If it's 3 guys, that can work too. And they're capable. They're deep. They have a lot of scoring options on this team. They just have to be players that it just has to be a situation where they show up consistently, night in and night out. Like Texas A&M, Dalton Connect wasn't hitting a ton of shots in the first half. He's kind of forcing things, and it felt like everybody was kind of standing around waiting on Dalton to do something. And Texas A&M was, putting up a 3-point barrage to start that game, and it got out of hand. And they didn't have enough. Tennessee didn't have enough guys consistently hitting shots. So they got to have that production, whoever it is, if it's 3, if it's 5, whatever. It can't just be Dalton Connect, put the team on your back and hope he goes wins your basketball game. You've got to help him as much as you can. And to see them do that and bounce back the way they have, that started at Arkansas with Jonas Adu playing the way he did, Zakai Ziegler playing the way he did, to continue against Vanderbilt. It's been a pretty big response from a pretty poor showing at College Station.
Yeah, it seems like, though, Grant, the 28 assists and 33 baskets comes along with having a balance of getting your stars like Connect involved, but also not over-dribbling, basically, as we've heard Rick Barnes mention before. Sharing the basketball and getting other players looks at the hoop. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. And hitting shots helps that. They came out of the gate, and I think they started 5 for 5 from the field and 3 for 3 from the three-point line. It just felt like whatever they were doing was working, and it felt like whatever Vanderbilt was trying to do was not working. It was just kind of one of those nights. But, yeah, that 28 on 33, I mean, that's a season high on assists, and that's just a crazy number when you consider you made 33 and you assisted on 28 of them. I mean, that is as ideal as it gets, and it's not just one guy making shots. It's a bunch of different guys making shots and doing so consistently. That's what this Tennessee team can be when everything's clicking. And when everybody's making shots, it feels like everybody's making shots. It felt like that was kind of I don't know if the ceiling of this team, but it felt like they couldn't have played much better.
Yeah, head coach Rick Barnes did mention maybe the focus or the approach coming into this ball game was because of the healthy amount of respect that the Vols have for Stack and obviously the Commodores. The game nearly wasn't a blowout like it was Saturday, the first time they played here in Nashville. Obviously, them getting off to a fast start, attacking the glass, and they're seemingly like a lid on the basket for the Commodores. It allowed them to kind of create that distance that was also insurmountable on Saturday.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like a running joke around here in the Knoxville media, I guess, because every time we talk to Rick before a Vanderbilt game, he's going to say Jerry Stackhouse runs good offense. Jerry Stackhouse runs good stuff. His X's and O's, his schemes or whatever, is some of the best in college basketball. And obviously last year, I think Tennessee's won 12 of 13 or 13 of 14 or something like that. But obviously Vanderbilt kind of stunned them in Nashville last year, and Vanderbilt, played them really tough the first 20 minutes at Memorial 3 weeks ago. Tennessee was down 5, I think. Vandy had slowed it down, and they were making kind of Tennessee play their game. So I do think Tennessee does kind of view Vandy as not a team you're going to beat by 35 and get up by 41, but a team that you're going to have to play well to beat, regardless of what the record is. I think that kind of starts with Rick, and he kind of instills that in his players. That if you let Vandy hang around, if you let Jerry Stackhouse hang around, he can upset you. And I think they obviously also just look back at the midweek games, because Tennessee went to Texas A&M and got handled pretty good for 40 minutes, and A&M went to Nashville and lost to Vandy. So in this league, it feels like, especially, It doesn't matter who you're playing. You can get beat if you don't show up and you don't respect your opponent.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, Grant. The A&M game seemed to retool their focus a little bit. They did let Arkansas hang around in the first half. I think it was like maybe a 5 or 6 point differential before they finally started getting things together and then created an insurmountable lead. But was that struggle, never leading in that game to a team that actually Vanderbilt beat as of recently, was that something you thought kind of made them, gave them the momentum that we saw on Saturday?
Yeah, I think that's kind of been something that this team's kind of I don't know. It's felt like they've needed that kind of game every now and then. They won, I don't know what it was, 6, 7 in a row earlier in the year, and then they went to Mississippi State and lost. And then they bounced back with 4 wins in a row and played really well, and then get beat by South Carolina at home. And they answered by going to Kentucky and winning at Rupp Arena and coming home and beating LSU pretty good. So it feels like this team, for whatever reason, they'll go on some runs and they'll put some wins together. And then they kind of have a setback, and it kind of refocuses them, humbles them a little bit, I don't know, resets something there, and they play well. And they're at a point in the season right now where Vanderbilt, Missouri, Texas A&M at home, Auburn at home, they're going to have to win some basketball games. They're going to have to stack some wins together because that final 2 weeks of the season is Auburn, is Alabama, is South Carolina, is Kentucky. Those are some of the best teams in the league, and Tennessee's going to be tested as much as they have been all season in those final 2 weeks heading into the final 2 weeks of the regular season heading into the postseason. So they need to continue to use that Texas A&M loss to kind of, this is how bad it can be, and then you can look at Vanderbilt and this is how good it can be, and try to, kind of be peaking at the right time and heading in the right direction at the right time.
Grant Ramey of VolQuest and On 3, our guest. Grant, down the stretch, how large is Tennessee's margin for error to win the SEC in the regular season? Can they afford one loss, or do they have to maybe run the table at this point to catch Alabama now as they sit in sole possession a second?
I think that's a question that Nate Oates has to answer. Tennessee's got to go to Alabama March 2nd. That's a Saturday night game. That's going to be a crazy atmosphere. It's always tough to win down there. It's always tough to beat Alabama during the Nate Oates era. But Alabama also has to go to Rupp Arena on Saturday. And Kentucky, for all the struggles they've had, they went to Auburn. They handled them like they did. Kentucky can score the basketball. If they can learn how to defend, they're going to be a really tough team to beat. And not a team that I would want to play down the stretch or in March, or if they're a 5 seed or whatever they are in the NCAA tournament. I would really want no part of that. So I think it depends on what Alabama does as much as what Tennessee does. Tennessee's got to win at Missouri. Obviously, they're 0-12 in the league. They're a bad basketball team. You got to beat A&M at home. You got to beat Auburn at home. You got to beat Kentucky at home. So you got to hold serve at home the rest of the way. You got to find a way to win at South Carolina after South Carolina kind of embarrassed you in Knoxville, and you got to find a way to be competitive and be in that game at Alabama in the second half and see what happens. That's going to be the toughest one to win, but I think it's also what does Alabama do from here. Auburn losing on Saturday, LSU winning at South Carolina on Saturday, that helped Tennessee in a big way. That puts Tennessee in second place in the SEC, a half game back of Alabama. Tennessee's going to have to take care of business at home and find a way to win some tough road.
Grant, Saturday was the first time Santiago Vescovi and Josiah Jordan-James have both scored in double figures in the same game in SEC play this season. It begs the question, outside of Dalton Knecht, who is Tennessee's most important player on this team?
I think the biggest X factor is Jonas Aidoo, because we've seen when he struggled, he had 6 and 5, I think, at Texas A&M, 6.5 rebounds. I think they were all in the first half. And then he goes to Arkansas, and he had 23 and 12, and he was dominant. And the Tennessee team just looks so much different when he's not going to have to do 23 and 12 every single night. That's unrealistic. But he has to be more than 6 and 5 every single night. And when he's playing well, him and Dalton Knecht can play this two-man game that's really tough to defend. So I think it's Jonas Aidoo more than anybody. And I also think it's the fact of, there's going to be nights where Santi doesn't hit shots. Jordan Gainey didn't hit shots the other night against Vandy. I think he was 0 for 6. Josiah's, he's hit or miss sometimes too. I think it's also a matter of, everybody's not going to hit shots on the same night. I don't think there's enough offense to go around, enough shots to go around for everybody on the team to be hitting shots and to be productive and to score the basketball. But X factor-wise, who raises the ceiling of this Tennessee basketball team the most that's not named Dalton Knecht? I think it's Jonas Adu. And maybe third is the Kai Ziegler because he is that point guard. He's the guy that's going to run the show, and he does so well defensively. He's such a great two-way guard, plays so well on both ends of the floor. When he's at his best, that obviously changes the Cincy basketball team too. They need Santi. They need Joe. They need Jordan Gainey to hit shots off the bench and to kind of be that sixth man. But I got to go with Jonas more than anybody.
Grant Ramey of VolQuest joining us this morning. One more for me, Grant. So when it comes to this being a tournament team and a good one, and I know it's hard to predict because anything can happen in the tournament, but overall, what is the difference this year they have perhaps? And I feel like you're going to say Dalton Connect, but just maybe something else that they have that could take them really far in this tournament.
I mean, Dalton's the biggest difference
because
he's that guy who can take over and can go get you a bucket when you have to have a bucket. And sometimes when shots aren't falling in March and you start to get nervous and it starts to kind of that snowball starts going down the hill, you need that guy that's going to be able to find you a bucket. That's the biggest thing. But I think it's more than just Dalton. They've scored 80 plus. I don't know how many times, 90 plus. I don't know how many times this season, more so than they have the past few seasons combined. And that's not just Dalton. That's Jordan Gainey scoring off the bench. That's Jonas being, a kind of a breakout year for him. That's Sakai playing some of the best basketball of his career. That's Josiah hitting shots as well, and Santi here and there. So I think it's more scoring depth that can be the difference. I think they're 15th right now in Ken Palm's adjusted offensive efficiency. They've been closer to 40, 50, 60 the last few years. So it's obviously a huge difference. But it's also, you said it's hard to predict. I think it's impossible to predict because 2 years ago they had won 12 of 13 going into the NCAA tournament. They had just come off their first SEC tournament championship since 1979, and it looks like they're playing the best basketball they've played all season. And they get to the second round against Michigan and the 11th seeded Michigan team, and Juwan Howard sends them home. And last year they're absolutely limping to the finish line. They're 4-6 over the last 10 regular season games. Sakai Ziegler goes down with the torn ACL. They win one game in Nashville, and they get beat by Missouri pretty good in the quarterfinal round, I believe, at Bridgestone Arena. And they're a trendy upset pick against Louisiana in the first round. They take care of business there. Then everybody in the world is picking Duke to beat them in the second round, and they beat Duke, and they kind of handled them about as tough and physical as you can handle them. And then they go to the Sweet 16, and you get put out by a Florida Atlantic team that's on their way to the Final Four. So it's not hard to predict. It's impossible to predict, but it's all about matchups. But you do feel better going into March this year because this is a different Tennessee offense than we've seen the last few years.
He is Grant Ramey of VolQuest and On3 joining us this morning talking Tennessee hoops. Great stuff as always, Grant. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks,
Appreciate y'all having me.
Yes, sir. Good stuff there from Grant. And I think the perspective, and I remember that when I was on the beat at Tennessee as well, on Jerry Stackhouse from the Tennessee perspective is really interesting because Rick Barnes coached against Jerry Stackhouse, the player, when Rick was at Clemson, and has a special connection with Stackhouse. I don't think it's just blowing smoke up a rival just to simply have them stay around because he's not threatened by him. I don't think it's that at all. I think he legitimately understands that X's and O's wise, Jerry Stackhouse is doing a fine job at Vanderbilt, but the roster just isn't good enough. You could try to cook a 5-star meal with
hamburger meat.
50 cent ingredients. It's not going to
Not calling the doors hamburger meat. I'm just saying. They don't see themselves as prime grade A steak like the Vols players see themselves.
And that's fair. I think, Stackhouse obviously admitting that, you still have to, you can't have excuses though. At some point the excuses don't work. You have to sometimes make that hamburger meat into, something at least that tastes really good. And I feel like that's the challenge at Vanderbilt. And maybe it's not fixable with just a head coaching change. Maybe there's philosophy that has to change around it, or, things that maybe down the road we'll see with where Vanderbilt lands, even conference-wise. I don't know if it's an easy fix because I think Stackhouse overall, I think he is a good coach. But here, it doesn't work because you're not getting the guys or they're leaving.
See the hamburger helper.
I love me some hamburger helper. Okay?
Coming up, let's go around the SEC where Kentucky may have given themselves the most impressive win in college basketball this season. We'll talk about it next.
Guys, it's a new year. Low T Center can make it a great one, though, okay? If you've been feeling tired, grumpy, have noticed a lack of motivation and drive, have weight gain and lost some muscle mass, these could all be signs of low testosterone levels. At Low T Center, they make it easy to get your levels checked. Just a simple blood test, and with their on-site lab, you'll get your results back in about 25 minutes. Low T Center is not your typical doctor's office, okay? It's a concierge medicine for men. Their physicians specialize in treating low testosterone and have been exclusively treating men for years with most health insurance accepted. And they have affordable and convenient treatment options, including physician-monitored self-inject treatments that ship directly to your home each month. So there's no need to drive to the center for weekly visits. Right now at Low T Center, it's only $25 to get your T levels tested. Make your health and quality of life a priority and make it a great year. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointments online today. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
Monday morning, kicking off a new week on RKW, brewed by 8th and Rose, 615-737-1045. Big Derrick Henry discussion coming up in a half hour. You can join us there and on Ramon, Kayla, and Will on X, at Ramon, Kayla, and Will. If you were Rand Carthon, what are you offering Derrick Henry this offseason? We'll get to that coming up at 8:20 this morning, 615-737-1045. Don has been waiting patiently to talk about Derrick Henry before we get to some SEC hoops headlines over the weekend. What's going on, Don?
All right. I'll try and be brief, but Derrick Henry is a generational running back, like Emmitt Smith was and some of the other great ones. He is a great Hall of Fame, guaranteed, with minus, barring injuries, a shoe-in for the Hall of Fame. I can't get my mind wrapped around letting him go for any reason. So they can very easily structure a contract that keeps him here for the rest of his career, maybe one or two or three different contracts, but they can structure an offer that will keep him here. The problem that he has is nothing to do with his abilities and skills and his physical makeup now. The problem he has is people who perceive him as losing physical abilities rather than understanding that was the most ridiculous excuse for an offensive line Tennessee has had for as long as I've been paying attention to him, which is 6, 7, 8 years.
Sure.
Now, that doesn't mean that because of their lack of ability and their and how poor an offensive line they were collectively. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from Peter Stronsky, except the fact that they moved him from his natural position of left tackle to right guard, and I have no idea why that was, unless whoever they put at left tackle had more, I don't know, cachet with the coaches and stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Well, and we'll get to all of this, and we appreciate the call, and we'll react to all of that coming up here shortly. But look, I mean, I think it's well documented, the fact that if you don't have the offensive line to let Derrick be what Derrick is, then what's the point in paying Derrick? Is the point there. And we could have the discussion of whether or not he is a generational talent and what that means coming up in the next hour as well. But I do feel like a lot of fans feel that way about, well, why in the world wouldn't they try? Which is why we're about to have the discussion. So
exactly.
There you go. We'll put a pin in that for the moment and get to it. But we appreciate Don hanging on for a while to be brief with us.
Yeah, we'll dig into Don's stuff because I liked some of his opinions, and then I wanted to bounce back on a couple.
But anyway, over the weekend, did Kentucky just win the most impressive win in college basketball this year? 70-59 at Auburn. We mentioned on Friday that Auburn, as a ranked team inside Neville Arena, is 67-4. Well, now they are 67-5 after only making 4 of their 22 three-pointers over the weekend. I did not see this one coming.
Tell you, this Campbellism at its finest, man.
Yeah.
Look at the quad one opportunities that Tennessee has down the stretch. They're all playing ranked teams. They're all playing each other down the stretch. You don't think that's going to have an effect? I mean, we were talking about it earlier, Caleb. The tournament, the SEC tournament is going to be played over in Bridgestone. It's going to be fun to watch because of all the fireworks. But these teams are going to be beating each other.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. This time of year, when you're trying to play your best basketball, but you're in a conference like this that on any given Saturday, somebody can step up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we've seen in the SEC the entire season. And even when you've had a huge home advantage like Auburn has had, that doesn't mean anything when it comes down to it, because you have a team like Kentucky who at times can look like a real Kentucky team. and they've had a little bit of a boost of confidence of late. They've played a little better defensively as of late, and you go in there and you get that type of win. That scares me for the rest of the conference down the stretch who has to play Kentucky, because that to me is a major confidence booster in a team this year who has been a little bit up and down and underperformed to the Kentucky standard.
It's just fun watching Coach Cal have competition, Will. You know what I mean? He ain't just running through the SEC like he used to, and they're always going to have a 1 or 2 seed or whatever. Nah. You got some teams that are stepping up now.
Antonio Reeves, 22 points as Kentucky ends Auburn's 16-game home winning streak that included 2 straight just dominating performances against ranked teams. How about LSU at South Carolina, 64-63, as former Vanderbilt guard Jordan Wright finished with 14 points, including a couple of free throws to beat his former teammate Miles Studi in South Carolina in Columbia. LSU erasing a 16-point second-half deficit to beat the Gamecocks. I don't think Saturday could have gone any better for Tennessee basketball fans. With South Carolina losing, with Auburn losing, the Vols now in sole possession of second behind Alabama. And like we just discussed with Grant Ramey a few minutes ago, a matchup in a little under 2 weeks with Bama in Tuscaloosa looms very large.
Yeah, like we said,
it'll be fun.
Auburn just beat the brakes off the Gamecocks.
615-737-1045. The Titans rounded out their coaching staff over the weekend. We'll tell you about their new special teams coach and the college football veteran coach joining the staff as well when we come back.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson here with our good friend and certified arborist, Dean Glasscock of Save a Tree. And Dean, you know, we live in here in Middle Tennessee, know that there's a lot of construction going on, a lot of new houses and buildings going up. So how can you kind of keep people's trees and shrubs in good shape with all this construction surrounding them?
Yeah, that's right. Hey, happy Monday, everybody. Thanks, Kayla. It's a beautiful day out there. I hope it's a good one for everybody. In the meantime, just pick up your phone. It has anything to do with your trees or shrubs or your lawn around your home. It's 615-299-9999. We've been saying it for 29 years now. Super proud of that. Don't forget it's Save a Tree, SAVATREE.com. Yeah, there's a lot. I've seen it through the years now. This long we've been in business and around serving the zone listers especially. If you've had people that come in and buy these homes with mature trees and they want to add on, or they tear the house down and build something else on these nice big lots, they call about a year and a half later and say, hey, my trees are dying. That's why I bought this lot. And the problem is soil compaction or root damage caused by mechanical injury. So pick up the phone. Give us a call, 615-299-9999, before you start doing construction. We can come out there and give you a lot of ideas about what you can do to save these big, beautiful, mature trees we have in our city. So that's what I got. We want to serve you if we can. And if you hold value with your landscaping and your trees, you want to call us, 615-299-9999. You all have a great week. Thanks, Kayla.
Thanks, Dean. That is why they are the experts, almost 30 years of experience. You heard them. Call them at 615-299-9999 or simply go to saveatree.com. That's SAVATREE.com.
8:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I am Robert Walsh. The Titans putting finishing touches on their staff, hiring special teams coordinator Colt Anderson. Anderson was on the Cincinnati Bengals staff with Brian Callahan since 2020. Anderson was the assistant special teams coach during his time with the Bengals. Tennessee went 2-1 over baseball's opening weekend, dominating the state of Texas with wins over both Baylor and Texas Tech, but fell on Saturday to Oklahoma 5-1. Tennessee is the only team in the country to have both baseball and softball ranked in the top 5. And another important date on the NFL calendar this week. Today, if free agents with dead money are not re-signed, their cap hit becomes official, and franchise/transition tag, the window for that opens tomorrow. Be ready for those updates. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second half of the show, hour number 3 starts right now on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. 104.5 The Zone. No, these voices are not recorded. We are live on your President's Day with Brad Hopkins in for Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, our producer. My name is Will Bowling. Streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV. You can see our beautiful faces for radio right there on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button, the follow button, and never miss a minute of RKW. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to talk about Derrick Henry. On the deadline to extend players before their void years accelerate into 2024, the Titans have 4 players today that they have until the end of business this afternoon to extend them before their void years accelerate into next season. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Azeez Al-Shire, and Sean Murphy-Bunting. Does not mean that you will not re-sign those players if you wait until after today. It just means you could save yourself a little bit of money going into 2024 if you get it done before the end of business today. So there you go. Halfway through the show, we're going to talk about what you would offer Derrick Henry. Already a lot of responses on Twitter. You can go there at Ramon Kayla Will. Or you can line up on the phone lines now at 615-737-1045. What is your contract offer to King Henry if you are Rand Carthon this offseason? Meanwhile, guys, the Titans have a special teams coach.
Yep.
What do we like about Colt Anderson?
Yeah, so I covered Colt at Montana. If you're just joining us now in the third hour, we are already in, my goodness. I spoke about, just what type of player he was, at least in my memory when I covered him, along with Mark Mariani, who played for the Titans. Just a very hardworking, blue-collar type of player he was. Growing up in Butte, Montana, up there's not much but the mines there, and just had to work for everything he had, including his career in the NFL, which started as a member of the Vikings practice squad and then was able to do enough to get signed by Philadelphia, where he wasn't there a long time, but when he was there and he was healthy, he was really beloved by the Philadelphia fans, which is really hard to do when you're a player there. But I think they saw that toughness that he brought and just the scrapping for every bit, then goes on and works as an assistant volunteer back in Butte as a high school coach. And then, clearly has been with Callahan the last 4 years in Cincinnati. And I think, as Brian Callahan did, really learned on a team that was successful and who had success, I think, even with special teams in particular. But I think detail-minded is huge with this position. And I think Colt is that. I think hardworking and being able to relate to players nowadays, I think he has that as well. Now it's all on you, though. Like, you are the special teams coach. You're not an assistant anymore. And there's a lot of things that need to be fixed on this special teams unit. But I think it's good characteristics to have this job.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. We already talked about the type of player that special teams players actually are. The grit, the hard workers, like you just mentioned, from Butte, Montana. Those are blue-collar people up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he speaks the same kind of language that players that he's coaching actually speak. You know, someone that spent, like you mentioned, 9 years on an NFL roster is now in the coaching realm of teaching players how to be better in that position. I think there's just it's just no better option for a guy like that to be able to relate to players that he's coaching than a guy that's actually done it, a guy that's, you know, has experience and has a relationship already that pre-exists with the head coach. So that makes sense for him to be a part of the team to help a phase of the game that is super important. I mean, we don't give a lot of credit to who special teams players actually are, but in the field position game, it is super important to have everybody moving in the right direction, giving maximum effort, because that's what it takes on special teams,
right?
And just giving you the abilities to win.
Brad, you mentioned something earlier that special teams coaches and just special teamers in general have a unique personality. How is the special teams coach different from other members of your staff?
He coaches every single position. Think about that. You've got receivers, you've got DBs, you've got offensive linemen, defensive linemen. This is the one coach that has his hands on every single position. Offensive line coaches don't coach D linemen or secondary guys. Secondary guys don't coach quarterbacks. Well, quarterbacks do you usually see in special teams. But the point I'm trying to make is they're the one coach that has their hands on every single player on the field, because those backups that aren't starters, they're playing special teams. So I'm going to be coaching a receiver. I'm going to be coaching a D lineman on field goal block. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be coaching an offensive lineman on field goal protection. So they have a relationship which is unique, that they have a hand on everybody that plays on that team.
It's interesting, that element of it. I remember in my athletic career, there was always, it feels like it is this way in every sport, where there's one position or one kind of player that personality-wise is just so different from everyone else. I guess in football that would be special teamers or even kickers and punters is the easy answer, right? Of just different kinds of personalities than maybe a lot of other guys on the team. For us, it was the pole vaulters. Like, if you were a pole vaulter, you were in a totally different headspace than everyone else.
If you're a pitcher, you're a different mentality. Like, those guys are different, right?
Well, think about it. We say that a fullback has a mental disorder because this guy is like, you know, coming from great
like
distances.
a catcher.
Right.
Yeah.
And guess who's screaming down the field as fast as they can run? Remember back when I played, and I hate saying it like that, back when I played, we had the wedge where guys locked arms, and there's some maniac that was designed, his goal was what? To be the wedge buster. So he's going to hurl his body at great speeds into this oncoming traffic, and, you know, you get killed that way. Not literally, but you see what I'm saying? So that type of person, you know, it takes a unique personality to play that kind of position.
Well, and also really quick, one more thing to add with special teams is there has been inconsistency in terms of the returner, specifically the punt returner, right? And we thought Kyle Phillips, when he came in, was going to be that lockdown guy. And we've seen him over the last 2 years lose all confidence back there. Could we possibly see them put him back there if he can maybe develop under a new head coach or learn how to, you know, not go back to making those mistakes that he's made? I don't know. Maybe we never see him there again, but I wouldn't count it completely out.
Titan fans of old will probably agree with me when I say this. The worst thing that happened to us during our run was when Derrick Mason became a starter.
Oh, geez.
Because Derrick, first off, he already cut his teeth at Michigan State as one of the more prolific collegiate returners, right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And then for him to come here and score touchdowns or give us the football offensively past the 50 because of the great returns he's going to get, we were spoiled. Then all of a sudden he becomes a starter receiver, and like, dang, man, we didn't have that field position that we had when he was back there just returning kicks, right? Because he came to us not as a high draft pick, but somebody that was going to come in and play special teams, essentially, because we had some starters at receiver that were definitely worth the bee's knees, and he was just fitting in where he could get in. But then all of a sudden he starts evolving into this guy that was a terrific route runner, unbelievable catch radius, and was a huge asset to us. So I say that tongue-in-cheek because, of course, his value to the team, it goes without mentioning. Derrick Mason was one of the best receivers that played for this franchise. But when he was a punt returner, You know, he was a kick returner. Boy, we were like, yeah. Kelly, we were standing at the 50-yard line to get ready to go on the field already because we knew that he was going to at least get that far.
That's incredible.
If he didn't put a point on the board.
615-737-1045. We give the number because we invite your answers and participation. What is your contract offer to Derrick Henry, or should the Titans even offer a contract to Derrick Henry?
Don't say that.
Our thoughts next. Kicking off a new week on RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast, where we invite your participation on the show with Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson, and Robert Walsh, our producer. I'm Will Bowling. Should the Titans offer Derrick Henry a new contract? And if so, what should the offer look like? As we speed forward into the NFL offseason and have our first deadline today, where the Titans have until the end of business today to extend Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Azeez Al-Shire, or Sean Murphy-Bunting before their void years accelerate into 2024. So essentially, the way I understand this, and I am far from an NFL contract expert, but this does not mean it's super unlikely that any of these players will be re-signed. It just means you would have to pay an additional void year cap charge and whatever the new cap charge is if you re-sign these players after today. But if you signed Tannehill, Henry, Al-Shire, and Murphy-Bunting today, then you kick the can down the road, and those void years now become whenever the contract ends, is the way I understand it.
The charge for the void year is prorated over the life of the new contract.
There you go. So void years, the popular way during COVID when the cap went down for teams to reduce a cap number in the short term and kick the can down the road, literally, to then at the end of these contracts pay $9 million in the example of Ryan Tannehill, whose contract was restructured in order to make room for Julio Jones. And now when the Titans don't re-sign him today, which is a win, not an if, $9.2 million onto the 2024 cap. There you go. So for Ryan Tannehill, it's $9.2 million. For Derrick Henry, $4.7. And then for Azeez Al-Shire and Sean Murphy-Bunting, minor charges for Azeez of $2.5 million and for Murphy-Bunting of $1.6 million. But we are focused on Derrick Henry this morning, guys. And the first question I'll ask, it may seem like an obvious one, but I think it is one worth asking. Should the Titans extend a contract offer to Derrick Henry this offseason?
I'm not going to say yes. I'm going to say absolutely. Now, I'm going to lay out a bevy of statistics that'll kind of back me up. And we did have a caller that passionately called for his return, and I agree 1,000%. There were 15 backs that rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. Derrick is number 6. He was number 8 in rushing grades as far as the potential of him doing something with the football. He was number 1 in touchdown to fumble ratio because he didn't fumble. That's who he is. He was number 2 in yards after contact, behind only one dude, and that dude was playing in the Super Bowl and was the rushing title leader this year in Christian McCaffrey. So he still checks off a huge ton of boxes. He's number 4 in missed tackles forced. In other words, behind like the line that he was talking about. Somehow he was able to make more dudes miss than got him on the ground, which sounds actually crazy. But he was in top 5 in a lot of statistical categories. Now, I get it. The rub is the guy's over 30, and that's probably part of the reason why we start talking about people being expendable, especially at the running back position. But I do see him as a guy that is a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to say first ballot because if Sir George ain't the first ballot, then neither should King Henry. And that's my guy. So I helped him rush for over 10,000 yards in his career. There's a reason why I have such high regard for him, because I know what a punishing runner he actually was. So before there was the King, there was Sir Edward. But I understand also the value of a good running back. And this guy still has so much left in the tank. Are we giving the contract now, or are we going to wait for that? Because I've got the contract already written.
We'll do that in a second. I wanted to ask the question first of, do you even send an offer, Kayla?
I think you have to at least try to send an offer. And I say it because I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but there are a lot of running backs out there right now on the market, or will be, that you could possibly sign. But why not, if you need something more in that running backs room, and we all know that Tajay Spears has an incredibly bright future, and I really do feel like they need to feature him more in this new offense. Why not, if you have an opportunity to at least offer Derrick Henry something, to bring back a guy that has completely brought a whole bunch of attention in a positive way to your organization over the last several years. Really, I personally would like to see him retire in a Tennessee Titans jersey, and I know a lot of fans would. He is not really taken many steps back. I mean, over another 1,000-yard year, 11 touchdowns, acknowledged the fact that maybe had a more difficult year behind that line, but it's not like that is going to hinder his ability in the offseason to work harder to be that guy again next season, hopefully behind another, a more improved offensive line, I should say. However, while I think they should extend the offer, I just don't know if it will be the offer that he necessarily agrees to, because I think his role would have to change a little bit in this new offense. I don't know if he'll be featured like he has in the past. And I don't know if the money would be good enough for him. And then also, would Derrick Henry look at this situation as, hey, these are my final years. This is the team that can go win a Super Bowl, when he might be thinking, I can go somewhere else and play behind a better offensive line, a team that might get there quicker. So I think they should extend an offer. I just don't know if Derrick Henry would be all in for what they're going to be able to offer.
To me, I think you put a 1-year deal on the table just for the purpose of, if you get to the trade deadline and you're not contending, you have an asset that can be traded for picks or a pick. To me, the reason why you offer him is to put yourself in the scenario you were in this past year where you didn't pull the trigger, and this time you actually trade him. Because as much money as the Titans have for this season, if they want to make it work, they can make it work with Derrick Henry, because you're not going to fix every hole in the offensive line for the next 3 seasons by paying a bunch of veteran, older offensive linemen a bunch of money. It's just not the way you build the biggest weakness on this roster. So if you're building an offensive line over the next 3 drafts, let's say, or we could even include last year's where you took a couple of linemen who played a bunch this year, and Duncan and, more importantly, Skoronski, you still have a lot of money to spend, because you're not going to spend it on offensive linemen for the most part. At that point, I'm putting a 1-year deal on the table thinking, all right, if we're back in a scenario where we're not contending, we're flipping you for a 4th or for a 5th at that point. Brad Hopkins, what is your contract offer to Derrick Henry if you are Rand Carthon?
You mean if I'm Brad Carthon?
That's right.
So I'm throwing a 2-year deal on the table.
Yep.
1 year doesn't do anything for me. And I don't think Derrick will be attracted to doing a 1-year deal every single year until he retires. That's just not what he's looking for, in my opinion. I'm doing a 2-year deal, and that 2-year deal is worth $2 million. That's $6 million per year. And the reason why I came up with that is because Joe Mixon, he signed the highest 2-year deal last year at $11.5 million. That was $5.7 million per year. Mixon's statistics weren't Derrick's statistics. He rushed for 1,000 yards, but 1,034 yards. It's almost 100 yards less than what Derrick actually ran for. His average was less. He had 9 touchdowns compared to Derrick's 12 touchdowns. And I think even snaps, Derrick's shown himself to still be very healthy at 317 snaps versus the 280 snaps that Joe Mixon got. I know we were talking about Joe Mixon earlier not being a part of the Bengals, but he's still a valuable asset that can run the football for anybody. The only thing that I think will make it impossible for us to sign Derrick is if another team that sees that same value was more desperate to see the statistics I just laid out and how much valuable he still can be. They're willing to pay a lot more than what the Titans are. I think a 2-year deal shows the commitment, and I'm actually even throwing a caveat in there. If you rush for 1,500 yards, I'm throwing another $1 million on the table, so that way it's more incentivizing for you to stick around. So you got a 12-year deal for me over 2 years. That's $6 million per, plus the ability to earn an extra $1 million if you rush for 1,500 yards. Because think about that. If Derrick ran for 1,500 yards at the age of 30 years old, that means some things are clicking here. And he probably helped that offense stay on the field and do some things better than they did this year. That means that there's probably some improvements in other positions to allow him able to do that. So I'm thinking that things are looking a lot better than they were for 2023. So I just think that he's healthy. He's not on the decline, right? And then when he looks around to see what other teams are willing to give him, I think Jerry Jones would see Derrick Henry and be like, yes, he could be a complete asset. I think the team that he thought he might go to when he was coming out, in college, Miami, might see an asset in him. But I think that the team that holds him in the highest regard is the one that he's played his entire career for, the fan base that adores him. And if they're willing to commit to more than just 1 year, give him a couple years, then he's 32 facing the same situation. It's completely different.
Yeah, and I was going back and forth with the number. I like the 2 year just because I don't think Derrick Henry would necessarily blink at a 1 year. I just don't think that he would be willing to just come back for 1 year. You've got to have something that's going to benefit you a little bit. And so I like the 2-year deal, and incentives definitely need to be a part of that. And I was going more with like an $8 million per year, but I feel like, and we've even heard upwards of 10 that Derrick could get. I think Mike Giannitti of Spot Track threw that number out. I was more close to like an 8 per year. I think I'd be okay with it. Maybe even 7 per year. So I just think you have to be not overly competitive in terms of the numbers you're throwing out, but it at least has to be something friendly of a contract for him, where if he is going to be given other offers, he can at least say, okay, I'll go for a little less, but I'm going to go back to a place I'm going to possibly retire, I'm familiar with, and I have some incentives built in there. I think I can get to that level again, because we all know Derrick Henry and how he treats his body. So, yeah, I'll go 2 years, 8.
Our contracts aren't that far off, because with my $1 million incentive per season, that's a chance to win $7 million per year.
That's fair.
But you got to rush for 1,500 yards.
You do.
1 year, $7 million. It's the offer I'm giving him.
Okay.
And that's an offer that I would expect to be accepted in June, if it ever gets accepted at all. I'm telling Derrick Henry, when you go talk to these contending teams like you're going to, when you go to Baltimore, when you talk to Philadelphia, Dallas, the other teams that are in the betting market to sign Derrick Henry, the Ravens at plus 200, according to DraftKings, are the best team right now, the most favored team. Eagles are second, Cowboys are third, Texans fourth, which I would be surprised if he would do that. But, I mean, you talk about playing for a Super Bowl contender, that's ultimately a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion, is Houston this upcoming season with their quarterback. But for me, you give Derrick a 1 year offer, because that is what running backs who can't get what they want end up signing for eventually. Josh Jacobs, after he ran for 1,600 yards at age 25, signed for 1 year, $11.79 million. Saquon Barkley, after running for 1,312 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4.4 yards per attempt, at 25 years old, 1 year, 10.1. 31-year-old Cordero Patterson is currently on a 2-year, $10.5 million deal. And 28-year-old Dalvin Cook, who is younger than Derrick Henry, is estimated this offseason to be available for 1 year, $4.3 million. Now, that is not the same caliber of running back Derrick is. Derrick is the quality of Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, when they were at 25, coming off of 1,300 to 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, around 4.5 yards per carry. And Derrick this season had 12 touchdowns and averaged 4.2 yards per carry. For me, I'm going to the middle ground between those two. He's not Dalvin Cook, but at 29, he's also not Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs, who were 4 years his junior when they signed their 1 year deals. That's why ultimately I think Derrick ends up settling for a 1 year, $7 million range. And maybe you see a team like Dallas or Baltimore that can add on options down the road and incentives to make that pot a little bit sweeter. But to me, I'm looking at Derrick Henry, if I'm Rand Carthon, and saying, we don't know what our offensive skill players look like without you, and we want the trade value possibility for you at the deadline. So put something on the table that's somewhat competitive, yet still is not going to meet the, I think, $10 million a year that he's likely going to get from a contender.
For a year, you said? $10 million.
I think he ends up signing for 1 year, $10 million.
Okay, but I'm thinking that a contender looks at Derrick like he's a cherry. He's not the sundae, because they've already been competitive enough without him.
I agree.
So they're not going to be desperate to throw that kind of number at him. And I think that Derrick, in his mind, is thinking, I'm too old to do 1 year deals all the time. I don't have that much time on the clock to be doing these 5, 6, 7 time bites at the apple. Like when you're talking about a 25, 26-year-old, I would expect him to have maybe 2 or 3 more contracts, 2 at least.
But those guys are only getting 1 year. I mean, that's the thing that's interesting to me is we don't know what Derrick Henry looks like in an offense that's not built around him. And that's where I think this gets interesting. There are not many offenses that I think are going to utilize him and his skill sets to the best of his ability, aside from Baltimore, Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh's in the mix for him. How many teams are going to make Derrick Henry the best version of Derrick Henry versus just throwing him as an ingredient into what they are already doing and hoping that he makes the entire thing better?
Right. At this point of his career, I think it's harder to make him the feature, right? Anywhere 100%. You go. Anywhere you go. I mean, even here last year, behind an offensive line that was not good, and we have to reiterate that, it wasn't like we've seen him necessarily in years before, and you can blame that on the line. But at the same time, I think once you hit that 30 mark, you don't have the same ability that you have in the past. That's, I think, just kind of a proven thing. And he could go out this year and prove us wrong. I just see him more in not a first role, but a secondary role in an offense where he's in red zone situations, right? He's in specific situations with this Titans team if they bring him back, which I think will be beneficial to them. Absolutely. I think they could use him the right way with this type of offense and the minds that are on this staff. And by the way, Bill Callahan, who knows a little bit of something in terms of having success in front of these guys. So I think it won't be the same, but if he's able to understand that, I think it would be a good fit here. I just don't think he'll be featured like that anywhere else either.
Yeah, but if you think about a conservative approach, conservative meaning you're not passing the bean as option number one. Art Smith is going to use him in that fashion. A defensive-minded head coach that understands the value of winning field position and just moving the chains isn't going to say, I need you to air it out and put up a bunch of points. So Derrick Henry's style of running, the attempts over and over and over again, the snaps that he got, 317 snaps. You see what I'm saying? How many opportunities to carry the football? I think that comes from a philosophy that some offensive coordinators still would have, like an Art Smith. If Najee Harris and Jalen Warren weren't a part of Pittsburgh, I think that he probably would be priority number one to be under Art's offense, and that way we can do some of the same things when he was at his best here in Tennessee.
Let's go to Danny in the Borough, who is up next on the phone line, 615-737-1045. What's up, Danny?
Hey, everybody. How we doing today? I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me for a second. I just wanted to throw a thought out there about Derrick Henry coming back to the Titans. I've watched Brian Callahan built offenses very closely for the past 5 years, and I just don't know that Derrick Henry as a style of runner is an ideal fit for a Brian Callahan offense, as I've come to understand them. Derrick Henry has not necessarily ever excelled in catching the ball out of the backfield, though he has done it more in the past couple of years. I'll give credit where it's due. But Brian Callahan's offenses have always had a more speedy back that can catch the ball and then run between the tackles in a spread formation. I think that Tajay Spears fits that mold significantly better than a Derrick Henry does, especially for the price tag that someone like Derrick Henry is going to command in an offense that's going to rely on speed and spreading people out more than it is power blocking because of the O-line deficiencies.
Yeah.
I think that it's time for Titans fans to embrace the future, take a beloved glance at the past, and bid a fond farewell to Derrick Henry and wish him that I get.
Thank you, Danny. And your connection was breaking up there a little bit at the end, but we got the gist of what you were saying. And to his point, Joe Mixon, for all the conversation around him being more of a power back, inline runner, all-purpose guy, had 52 catches for 376 yards this past season in that Cincinnati offense. That is 24 more catches than Derrick Henry had and 162 more yards than what Henry had in 17 games this season.
I think sometimes that's out of necessity. If you had 5 all-pros up front that were just mauling a defensive line, you could put together 10, 11, 12 plays and eat up clock and move the chains. I think that any offensive coordinator would run a style of offense that's predicated towards a Derrick Henry. But when you're not blowing dudes off the line of scrimmage, and the Bengals line wasn't blowing anybody off the line of scrimmage, then you kind of go east and west. Rather than sledgehammer, you're going like a saw back and forth. And I think that's kind of the style that maybe we're delegated to because of the offensive line issues that the caller mentioned.
We'll tell you what Mike Giannitti had to say of Spot Track with us on the show a few weeks ago about Derrick Henry and the market he expects Derrick to have in free agency. That's next.
When it comes to large home repairs, a lot of the time we homeowners pretend we do not see the warning signs. We're afraid of what we're going to hear. This is especially true with waterproofing and foundation repair. It could be something big that needs to be fixed right away, or it could be a small problem now that'll become bigger later. Or it could be nothing at all. Bottom line is We don't know, and we certainly don't want to be sold something we don't need. We need a peace of mind. And United Structural Systems is the company to give you that. They have over 25,000 100% satisfied residential customers, and this is how they make that happen. When USS comes out to your house, you're going to get a problem solver who provides a peace of mind to their customers, the homeowner. You're not going to get someone who's worried about meeting a sales quota, upselling the next big thing, but someone there to educate you and help you understand what is happening with your home. At USS, their only measure of success is how satisfied the homeowner is and not a closing ratio. Homeowners trust USS, keeping homes dry and stable for over 25 years. USS serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and Northern Alabama. You can reach them online at USSTN.com or call them 615-488-7855.
This is your Off the Track Racing Report, brought to you by Nissan of Rivergate.
A doubleheader at Daytona. For the first time ever, Daytona will host 2 races on Monday. Rain washed out the Xfinity and Cup Series races over the weekend, causing the unprecedented decision of both races being run on Monday. The Xfinity race is set for a 10 a.m. Central start on FS1, with the Daytona 500 slated for a 3 p.m. Central green flag on Fox. Former Daytona 500 winner Joey Logano will start from the pole and will share the front row with Michael McDowell, who won the Great American Race in 2021. To local racing news, it was announced last week that the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix IndyCar race has been moved to Nashville Superspeedway. It remains the final race of the IndyCar season, Sunday, September 15th on NBC. The series previously raced at that oval from 2001 to 2008. Scott Dixon is the last IndyCar driver to win at the venue, scoring a three-peat in 06, 07, and 08.
This has been your Off the Track Racing Report, brought to you by Nissan of Rivergate. Have you ever noticed how many car dealerships there are in the Middle Tennessee area, and they all tell you they have the largest selection and the best prices in town? I'm Liz Allison. I'm here to tell you how to make your life easier. Head straight to Nissan of Rivergate. They truly have the largest selection and the best prices in town. I know this because I'm on car 3 from Bob McCracken and his team at Nissan of Rivergate. Cut out the dealership hopping and make Nissan of Rivergate your only stop. Nissan of Rivergate, 1550 Gallatin Pike North in Madison. NissanofRivergate.com.
Ramon, Kayla, and Will is brewed by 8th and Roast on 104.5 The Zone. And coming up in 15 minutes, there is an NFL.com ranking that has the Titans' top 10 in one category. And it is a positive category. We'll get to that coming up in 10 minutes. 615-737-1045. We asked the people before the break, what would be your contract offer to Derrick Henry? Put Carthon in your last name and put yourself in Rand's shoes for a minute. We asked Mike Giannitti, contract expert for SpotTrack.com, about that last week. And Mike Giannitti is perhaps higher on Derrick Henry's value as a free agent than most national people you listen to. This was him on our show last week about what Derrick Henry's market will be.
This has been one of the more polarizing situations we've had this winter because, look, the stats still say $10 million a year. You know, the stats still say he should sign a 2 for $20. He's still one of the highest rated. Even the advanced stuff still says he can do this at a high level. He's just not a dynasty running back anymore, right? He's a 1 or 2 year flyer, and you know what you're getting, I think. I still think that we get there, and it's important, by the way, for this running back market and this position financially, that he maximizes his compensation, even if it's with, right, Philly or Baltimore or one of these contending teams that may not have the cap room, necessarily speaking. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's a minimum player, even though most of these veteran running backs at his age go down to the 1 or 2 million mark. But I'm just telling you what the math tells me. It's about $10 million a year. I don't know if we end up there, but for the running back's sake, I sure hope it does.
2 for $20, what Mike Giannitti estimates, and Spot Track in their exact estimation, if you go look on their website, which I highly recommend, by the way, it's a great resource, not just to the NFL as well, but in all professional sports around the country. They say 2 years, $19.46 million, a 9.7 average annual salary. And guys, the only reason I say the Titans shouldn't offer that is because I think the Titans are less motivated to bring him back, perhaps, than a contender is at this point.
Yeah, I think also maybe even the chasing of a chip might be something that Derrick Henry is looking at, because that's how we're measured. Nobody's going to remember how much money he made in his final few years playing professionally, but they will remember him actually being a back that gave a team a chance to win a championship. If he comes out of there with the ability to win the division, dare we say the conference, and end up playing in a Super Bowl, those are the things that establish a legacy. Eddie played in the Super Bowl. That's one of the differences. And
he's still not in. Let's make that clear, too.
Yes.
That's a big point that people forget about. I know Don Johnson called in earlier and said, well, he's a lock Hall of Famer. We don't know that yet, folks, because while the numbers, I feel like, are there or getting there or close to being there,
yep,
this has still been proven that if you don't at least get to a Super Bowl, you're having a harder time getting to Hall of Fame status, and that's a fact.
Unless you're Barry Sanders.
Exactly. And that's why I think Derrick Henry, he's a smart dude. He knows that he wants to have a legacy that includes being a Hall of Famer, but he's got to be able to probably get to that game. And I don't know if he can do that in the next couple of years on this Tennessee Titans team. So I think that is definitely what he's taking into consideration.
The interesting thing about Derrick as well is the influence of Eddie George, and the fact that Eddie's franchise-leading 10,009 yards makes him the leading active rusher, or the leading rusher in Titans history. And if Derrick Henry was to stay here for another 2-year contract, he's got a really good opportunity, if he stays healthy, to be the team's all-time leading rusher. I think the thing that's difficult in sports, and this is true in baseball, it's true in football, it's true in a lot of different contexts. When you go somewhere else and don't replicate your production at your original stop, that more than anything hurts your Hall of Fame resume. And people point to Eddie George's time as a Dallas Cowboy as a really big reason why he's not a Hall of Famer. People in baseball point to Andrew Jones's time as a Los Angeles Dodger as a reason why that guy is not in the Hall of Fame. You have to leave a lasting impression as much as anything in all of this, and that includes going to a place where you aren't the focal point and still proving that you are a generational talent.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Earl Campbell didn't have a problem with that, and he finished as a Saint.
That's true.
And that's why it needs to be a smart decision on Derrick Henry's part as well if he does leave for another team, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Makes it hard.
He's got to continue, to me, 2 more years at this pace, and he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think if his career ended tomorrow, I don't think he's in yet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say let's say Kansas City picked him up, and because Pacheco wanted a bunch of cash, and then he ended up winning the championship with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think that with his resume to this point, it would be a question of him getting into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, me too.
But I think if he gets 600 yards as the backup and gets a ring.
No, that's why I said Pacheco's gone. So it's just him. You know what I mean?
So he's at least getting what? Like,
why would the Chiefs don't need Derrick Henry?
Right, but
I'm just
you're
saying
just using an example.
I'm using an example of a team that's actually at the stair step of getting a championship, another championship. And if he's on that team and he's a catalyst for the reason why they won, then it's a no-brainer.
I agree. Maybe it's my...
the Ravens. He's better than Gus
that's
Edwards.
What
give me the Ravens. Give me the Ravens. He's part of the Ravens team.
You got a lot of options, though, in Baltimore as well. And John Harbaugh has always had a lot of mouths that he feeds in different ways. Like Dave and Bert's the resident Ravens fan in the room, but I always hate having Ravens running backs in fantasy football because they play 4 of them a game almost.
Yeah, but Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, wow.
Don't get me started. Gus Edwards is a free agent, but a fun fact for you guys. Do you know the last Super Bowl champion who did not have a running back on a rookie or a vet minimum contract?
What? Give us.
Sorry, so at running back?
The last Super Bowl champion who had a running back on a large contract. You guys know who it was?
The Broncos.
It wouldn't be Marshawn Lynch with Seattle, would it?
It would be Seattle.
Yeah, I was
2014. So almost 10 years since
time.
someone has won a Super Bowl with a high contract running back.
That's why I think the Titans are using one of those 7th-round picks, complimenting Tajay Spears, and are done with it. Call it a day. 615-737-1045. Coming up next, a national outlet has some praise for the Tennessee Titans, ranking them top 10 in one category that bodes pretty well for Rand Carthon. We'll tell you what it is coming up next.
Oh, man, it's February. I don't know about y'all, but I always feel a little bit more like kind of not able to function at a high level this time of month. I'm like a little bit down in terms of my energy. Maybe it's just the weather out there. You're just kind of waiting for the spring and summer to come. And really from the air we breathe to the food we eat, all the stress that we have on our bodies, we've got that toxin building up in us. It's causing our bodies to prematurely age, gain weight, especially, like I said, this time of year. Well, we've got a special treat for you. Members Nutrition is here to create a movement. Really, no pun intended there as well. We want to get you guys feeling healthier, happier, younger, and less bloated, really introducing this new youthful cleanse. And it's really a simple thing. It's not something that you've got to change your diet completely to go on to just feel like you can get energy upper this time of year. Youthful Cleanse, you can check it out today at membersnutrition.com. Really just take control of your health, take control of your life, and get yours today at membersnutrition.com. They also have some great vitamins there. I'm using a probiotic right now that I really like. So if you want to check out what they have to offer at incredible prices, check them out at membersnutrition.com.
9:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Titans putting the finishing touches on their staff hiring special teams coordinator Colt Anderson. Anderson was the Cincinnati Bengals staff member with Brian Callahan since 2020. Anderson was the assistant special teams coordinator during his time with the Bengals. Tennessee went 2-1 over baseball's opening weekend, dominating the state of Texas with wins over both Baylor and Texas Tech, but fell on Saturday to Oklahoma 5-1. Tennessee is the only team in the country to have both baseball and softball ranked in the top 5. Another important deadline on the NFL calendar this week. Today, if free agents with void years are not re-signed, their cap hit will become official by the end of the business day today. And tomorrow, franchise tag and transition tag window will open. Expect some updates on that front. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Rose for one final hour, kicking off the new week in your Monday morning. We've got Brad Hopkins filling in for the Big Ragu, Ramon Foster, who is back with us tomorrow. Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling, and Robert Walsh, our producer. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Brad will give Ramon the key and allow himself to unlock the door and get out of whatever broom closet you've got him stuffed into.
Yeah, so you think.
So you think you said.
No, you gave me a glance when I said Ramon will be back tomorrow. You're like, oh, you think I'm going to let him out?
No, actually, I'm checking my emails here because I thought that I was on tomorrow.
Oh.
Are you?
I'm going to double check. Hold on a second. Because I think, as I check my emails.
You may be.
I don't even know what day it is, so
maybe I'm messing up on that.
Your bet's as good as mine would be.
It's 9th. What's tomorrow? The 20th? Yep. I'm on tomorrow, too.
Look at that.
Brad Hopkins will be back with us tomorrow.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that's
my mistake.
Sure.
I apologize. Ramon will be back Wednesday.
Get back in there, Ramon.
There we go. Get back in the broom closet.
I understand why you were giving me that look. I'm really glad I said something.
I'm glad you
Actually, me too, Will, because I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Word of Brad Hopkins' downfall have been greatly exaggerated.
Goodness.
Got me in there with Jerry Stackhouse. What's
I
going on
promise
here?
you, we really like you.
Goodness.
Like, we want you to be here. I'm not trying to run you off.
Ramon's at home listening. He's like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to be back tomorrow.
So
Magic Johnson, I ain't going to be there.
I bet some people think that me and Ramon are like Clark Kent and Superman. Like, they're never in a room at the same time. Do
That
these two
would be
actually
kinda fun.
exist? Are you kidding me?
That
Me and
would be
Ramon would
kinda
kill
fun.
it. I'd love to be on with the big boy.
We have a left tackle and a left guard.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Bert can play center.
Perfect.
Yeah, Bert. Play center. Snap.
Some news this morning, courtesy of Jordan Schultz just a few minutes ago. The Buccaneers had a soft deadline today to get an extension done with Pro Bowl wide receiver Mike Evans. But Jordan Schultz writes, both sides remain far apart. Tampa Bay is set to take on $7.4 million in 2024 dead money by not getting a deal done today. He says talks will continue, but Jordan Schultz's understanding is Evans is trending toward becoming a free agent, barring an unexpected change in discussions. I do think there's this idea out there that if you don't get a deal done today, it means that something isn't going to happen between those two sides. I don't think that's necessarily the case. It just means that you're paying that dead cap number, that void year, in addition to whatever a renegotiated contract would be. So just because the Titans are not re-signing Derrick Henry today doesn't mean they're not going to re-sign Derrick Henry. I would still put the chances between 10 to 15% that they make that decision. However, same with Sean Murphy-Bunting and Azeez Al-Shire. If they go through into business today and have to pay that void year cap charge, it doesn't mean that the conversation just ends and that they go their separate ways.
It's interesting because it is kind of similar what in terms of the Mike Evans effect has had with Tampa, and people want to see him retire as a Buck, probably with just, everything he's done in the community, everything he's done as a player. But he's at that point, right, where he's still offering something to the team. But it's like you just don't know if it's beneficial for both sides to continue there. I think it's more prone to happen there than possibly in Tennessee with that position being wide receiver. And maybe, there's not as much emphasis put on the running back. But again, I don't know. I mean, they still I think really hold Derrick Henry in high regards here because of what he's done.
I think it may be a bit of age discrimination like we're talking about in a lot of other situations. It's like the systems nowadays are designed around younger players, and we always want to see change when a guy's been around for a long time. To hear a player playing for one franchise entire career, like whenever I tell people that I played for 13 years for the only one franchise I was drafted by, people look at me like I'm crazy.
Mind blown, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And it's almost unheard of in today's game. So why not have a guy that started his career in Tennessee, finished his career in Tennessee? Because he still holds a lot of value. Shoot, the 2-year deal that I had on the table for him was far less than the one that the Spot Track guy had on.
$6 million?
Right. You see what I'm saying? So it's not like the guy still can't play football, but when we start talking about aging people, we always kind of speak it into reality. The fact that there needs to be change. And I get it. Systemically, when you're dealing with the issues that the Titans have dealt with at the line of scrimmage, that does affect the style of running that Derrick Henry has really taken advantage of. Having guys that create a buffer between he and the defense has been something that we've held in a lot of regard when it comes to Derrick Henry mashing and mauling over people. But when, basically you see defenders around his feet when he receives the handoff, and the scat back being seemingly the more advantageous style of running back to have, like a Tajay Spears that can catch the ball in the backfield, that can get things going from almost 0 to 100 versus that locomotive style that needs to get chugga, which then we see it take over games. But Derrick is not explosive from the handoff. He's explosive 3 or 4 steps in, which is what we heard so many times. You get to Derrick Henry before that third step, you got a chance. But after that, it's a wrap.
NFL.com writers Eric Edholm and Chad Reuter ranked the top draft classes from 1 to 32 from 2023, and the Tennessee Titans cracked the top 10.
Let's go. Okay.
Number 9, in fact.
Let's go.
Where it's interesting, they write about Peter Skoronski maybe more complimentary things than what many fans or others would say. Saying Skoronski hit the rookie wall at the end of the year, giving up sacks in 4 consecutive games per Pro Football Focus, but he showed enough to be considered one of the top up-and-coming linemen in the league, which to me is not necessarily a bad take, but it is more complimentary than what I would expect a national perspective to give Peter Skoronski and the Tennessee Titans. They have the Houston Texans, meanwhile, as the number 1 rookie draft class in the NFL, and that seems to be a pretty easy pick.
My rookie year, I thought I stunk like you would not believe, but I made the all-rookie team. You see, so from my perspective, I struggled handsomely in the run-and-shoot offense, trying to figure out my footing and whatnot. John McClain would echo the same thing. But yet, from a national perspective, I was one of the few rookies that started 11 games as a true rookie at left tackle. So taking those things in consideration. But then again, I was on the offensive line that had Bruce Matthews and Mike Munchak. David Williams was another first-round pick that we had at right tackle. So there was a lot of talent up front. Peter didn't have that luxury. I mean, he's pretty much it as far as guys that you feel have an upside, on this offensive line. So I'm not surprised that people recognize that outside of Nashville Metro, that this guy actually can be pretty good in the future.
Peter's going to be solid.
I
don't think people have anything to worry about. And look, I know there's the debate going on of should they try him out at left tackle. And you know what? They might. This is a whole new staff. You've got Bill Callahan. But my whole thing is if Bill Callahan decides to do it, I trust him. If he decides to not do it, I trust him. He's going to know where Peter is going to play and is going to be able to have what you hope is, a really solid future here. But Peter had an ever-changing left tackle on the other side of him. Like, you cannot really put a ton of blame on Peter this year for maybe having a little bit of a rookie roadblock in the end. He dealt with the appendectomy stuff. So I think overall, success was seen in terms of Peter Skronsky, Tajay Spears had a really great rookie showing. Look, all of their rookies played. I mean, Colton Dowell down the stretch, really good in terms of special teams. I think started to prove himself. Jalen Duncan was thrown into the fire. We'll see if we can see development out of him with Bill Callahan now there, because I think you could technically have him as a solid backup. Tight end Josh Wiley, I think at times you saw where he could be in terms of his physicality, how tall he is, but he had some injuries. And then Will Levis. And let's not forget about the quarterback that came in for Ryan Tannehill and impressed a lot of people. So overall, successful draft class that can still be developed here over the next couple of years into maybe even more successful.
Jeremy in Nashville next on the phone lines. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, good morning, guys. Talking about re-signing Derrick Henry, you just look at the reality of the situation with this offensive line. It's like, is this really a situation that he would want to come back to? And if they were, you'd have to offer him, like the Spot Track guy said, the kind of max deal that the numbers would suggest that he's, going to be worth on the free agent market. But at the same time, there's so many other issues that they got to address to even make this a situation that somebody would want to return to be behind that offensive line. So unfortunately, it looks like Derrick Henry's time in Nashville might be done, and that's not what any of the fans want it to be, but that's just likely the reality of the situation. That's all I'd say. I'll hang up and listen to what you guys got to say.
Thanks, Jeremy. I think the mark of a good general manager is knowing when to let go of a veteran that you could easily bring back. And it's one thing that John Robinson at times struggled with, and then you look at guys like Jarrell Casey. He got that one perfectly right. He got rid of Jarrell Casey in a moment where a lot of people were confused why he was moving on, yet then he never really did much of anything in Denver. And that's no disrespect to Jarrell Casey, but you have to be able to move on from a guy a year too early, maybe more often than hang on to a guy a year too long. And there will not be a more perfect transitional time to go ahead and salute Derrick Henry and say thanks for the memories and move on. You got a really good moment right now to change what you do on offense. I think a lot of fans are starting to come around on that and understand it. Yeah. 615-737-1045. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, having never spent time on any other roster, sometimes that can be intriguing. And for Derrick to have spent his entire career here in Nashville, it might be something that he's really thinking about. Hey, man, how is the other peanut butter and jelly sandwiches made?
Coming up next, interesting conversation with Chris Lee of VandySports.com. We've gotten the Tennessee perspective on Saturday's blowout win for the Vols over the Commodores, with rumors swirling about Jerry Stackhouse's future. How did we get to this point where a coach can go from coach of the year to on the hottest seat in the SEC? And how safe is he? Is there a chance a change could happen before the SEC tournament? We'll talk about that with Chris Lee coming up next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson for Wang Vision Institute. And if you're wondering what exactly they do, well, it's in the name. Yes, they are great when it comes to your eye care, the health of your eyes. You moving forward, it doesn't even have to be something now. I went in and got a check about 3 months ago, it now has been, and they put me through everything in terms of what I needed to do in the future. And this is the place to do it. From the receptionist up front to the doctors that you're working one-on-one with, they will set you up for your eye care health now and for the future. They also will set you up for a beautiful skin. Yeah, that's right. They have intense pulse light treatments that they offer there. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great treatment, takes about 20 to 30 minutes. It's a photofacial treatment that really rejuvenates the skin. Maybe you're seeing sun damage. As you get older, you see those dark spots appear. This treatment is awesome for evening out the skin tone, your texture, as well as maybe if you're dealing with hyperpigmentation, which I know I deal with, and it has helped with that. So for more information on IPL treatments, along with other services, you can visit wangvisioninstitute.com today. Also, if you're interested in a free online vision seminar, that happens tomorrow and every Tuesday at 6:45 p.m. All you've got to do is RSVP and schedule that consultation and treatment today at weighingvisioninstitute.com.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
Fourth and final hour of the show continues on Ramon, Kayla, and Will, brewed by 8th and Rose. Brad Hopkins in for Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you. We've discussed Tennessee and Vanderbilt in Thompson Bowling Arena over the weekend from the Tennessee perspective. Now we get the other side of that conversation with our friend Chris Lee. You can watch the Southeastern 14 YouTube channel to see his coverage of SEC hoops and more, and read his stuff at vandysports.com as well. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Doing well. Gonna be a busy week, one way or the other.
Certainly. So let's start with the rumors and the rumblings around Vanderbilt's program. It's uncommon to let go of a coach before conference tournaments. Ohio State did it. They just beat Purdue yesterday. But what are you hearing about Jerry Stackhouse's future at Vanderbilt, and how did Vanderbilt get to this point where the guy could go from SEC Coach of the Year to maybe having the hottest hot seat in college hoops?
Oh, man. Answering either one of those questions in full would probably take longer than you've got scheduled. But, I mean, the truth is rumors are flying, have been for 24 hours now. Some people think that they're going to make an imminent dismissal. I'm a lot more skeptical of that. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but it wouldn't track with what they're going to do. I think their buyout is $8 to $10 million. I don't know how that gets settled. If he takes dimes on the dollars for that, for the move on. And here's the thing, guys. Last week they were not in the mindset of moving on. When I was told they were trying to lay out the case that with some NIL money and maybe some transfers, he could flip this thing. He was SEC Coach of the Year last year, in a literal sense. At least he tied for that with Buzz Williams in one of the votings. So I think that's where their head was a week ago, but it's gotten bad. I mean, even the win over A&M, that happened at the buzzer. And it's just been bad this year. I mean, they've been blown out repeatedly. Even in some of Jerry Stackhouse's worst years, they were more competitive than they've been against the top teams. I mean, when you're getting beat 30 points several nights in a row, that's never good. How they got here, look, the warning signs have been here with Jerry Stackhouse since before he ever coached his first game. The recruiting and the effort there and the procedure just have not been up to par with what you need to do in NCAA to win at a high level. The player turnover has been awful. The in-season work ethic has been very questionable. I think that there were warning signs here from the minute he got on campus. I always thought it would kind of play out like this. Last year was a little bit of an aberration. I'm not going to discredit what they did by saying they got lucky. They won 11 SEC games, but they won a disproportionate amount of them by very close margins during that streak that got them to 11 wins. And I think water is sort of returning to its own level this year.
Chris Lee, Southeastern 14, where you can subscribe to hear him talk SEC hoops on YouTube. Vandy Rivals writer as well. And Chris, when you talk about the challenges specifically of coaching at Vanderbilt in any sport in the transfer portal and NIL era, you've got former Vanderbilt players on good SEC teams, not just other college basketball teams, but staying within the conference. And two of them played each other in a great one over the weekend, Miles Studi and Jordan Wright. How much of a unique challenge does Jerry Stackhouse have replacing outgoing transfers with incoming transfers? And is that more challenging at Vanderbilt than it is at other places?
Oh, it absolutely is. And look, I'm not knocking the school for this necessarily. Or maybe I should. I don't know. But most places, and I've been in college admissions before, some places have rules about how many hours you transfer in. And in a lot of places, for example, if it's 120 credit hours, a lot of schools out there, and these are the more elite public private schools, are going to want you to transfer in no more than 60 hours. So let's do the math on that. Once you become an academic junior, you're losing out all hours automatically when you're transferring to Vanderbilt. You're looking at some of these schools that are getting in seniors or juniors, and Vanderbilt Jerry Stackhouse complained about it early, but he's right. He can't get those guys in where other schools can unless guys want to lose a bunch of hours. And occasionally you'll get a guy that'll do that. Ezra Mannion, their best player, I think, lost some hours from Cal Irvine. But it's a rarity. I mean, why would you go to Vanderbilt when, all things considered, you could go somewhere else and get more of your hours in? I think Vandy's the only school in the conference with that issue. There's a few other schools in Power 5. I know Michigan's had that issue. That's come up when you've heard talk about Juwan Howard and why it's not worked there. But they're an outlier in that. And number two, I don't think he's ever really helped himself with the booster base. I'm not saying all the boosters can't stand him. There's some that do like him. But it's the NIL era. And when you insult your fan base like he did a couple of years ago with the Trump voters comment and the implications that went with that, a lot of people were out at that moment. And when you've got to raise funds, because it is largely about NIL these days, and when you are picking off the guys that are the people that fund those things, it's even harder to win. And I think if something leads to his dismissal, I can't prove it, but I think there's a strong chance that the NIL, the unwillingness to contribute to NIL was a part of it. Because I was hearing last week what they were trying to make that case that he could do it. And I'm wondering now, as the climate around the discussion seems to have changed, if maybe they tried that and people just told him no. As long as he's the coach, we're not going to do it.
Chris Lee, you can follow him and watch on YouTube at Southeastern 14s. Chris, so a lot of the people we've talked to, the excuse is, well, they've lost a lot of guys in the transfer portal, which we just kind of spoke about. But at this point, I don't feel like they have been able to win on the road this year. Is that correct? They're, at least in conference play, they're 0-7. It's not like they're going into anywhere and getting any of these upsets where we've seen, a couple big wins this season, but there's no consistency, and there hasn't been consistency. And I think in a conference that's growing in terms of being one of the better conferences in the SEC, you have to really pull the trigger at some point, possibly on a new head coach. But what type of coach can you get in here, that you feel like is going to be competitive with some of these Bruce Pearls, Rick Barnes, et cetera?
Well, they're not winning anywhere right now. They've lost some games at home to some teams that aren't 500. They did beat Missouri a couple weeks ago. That was without Sean East. Well, I shouldn't say without Sean East, but he sprained his ankle in that game. He's their best player. Clearly wasn't the same guy. I think they've got 2 wins over teams that are above 500 this year. I think that just tells you everything. What kind of coach could they get? I think they could get a good coach. Now, the way they go about getting a coach is different than the way any of us in this discussion would. They're looking for someone who represents their values and their vision, and winning and losing is just one thing on the list of a lot of things. I think political alignment with them a lot of times is important. It's not always a deciding factor, but they don't want somebody who's going to come in and make demands of them and upset the apple cart and, push for probably different admissions policies. I'm not saying that there couldn't be a different time, but traditionally those are things that they've not liked. They're usually looking for a guy who will accept things as they are. So, the pool of candidates they could get and the pool of candidates they're going to look at, I would think are different things. Now, if it's me, the 3 guys I'd be looking at hard: Chris Mack, whose daughter is coming to play there. He's out of coaching right now. Obviously won big at Xavier and then had it fall apart on him at Louisville. I would look hard at Alan Huss at High Point. And that one might be of interest to them because he's worked at Creighton and got their NIL thing rolling. Creighton's a private school. That's a thing that matters to them. He is killing it at High Point, which is also a private school. In his first year, that's a place that they've not won a lot. He's going to be a guy that's in demand, and I would also take a really hard look at Bucky McMillan at Sanford. I think he could come in and recruit the kinds of players that you traditionally won at with Vanderbilt. For 30-something years with the three-pointer, really until about right now, Vanderbilt's always been able to shoot on par with the best teams in the league. That is noticeably absent this year. You've always been able to win with shooters at Vanderbilt. Bucky McMillan will play a very exciting style. I don't know if he appeals to them or not, but that's a guy that I think would be gettable, and I would certainly look at because I think he could really do the things at Vanderbilt on the floor that have proven to be successful for them.
So if that is the case, if there is a move made, whether it be, this week or at the end of the season in terms of a head coach, what is a reasonable turnaround for this program? Like I said, that you can't keep on getting behind the 8 ball in the SEC because teams are taking step forward, and then you're also adding Texas and Oklahoma. That's
a great question because on one hand, you can flip a roster through the transfer portal. But at Vanderbilt, again, that you're going to be limited. There's probably going to be a year and a half of players that you can't get, maybe 2 years, juniors and seniors. And maybe if you can get a grad transfer in, that's an option. If you can go find a coach that can bring in 8 freshmen and sophomores from the portal who can play, then maybe you got a chance. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a long rebuild. Well, I shouldn't say a long rebuild. I don't know that any rebuild is long these days if you do it well. Those are the frames of the picture, I guess, or the borders of the picture that, because it's with the portal these days, if you can get a coach who can kill it there, and I think Huss and Bucky McMillan are 2 guys. Huss for sure. I think he's got 4 really good transfers at High Point, and I think they're winning the Big South right now, last I checked. Maybe you could find a guy like that, but again, it's going to come with limits because I think in juniors and seniors, you're going to be more limited with what you can do there.
Chris, when you mentioned work ethic and effort being a problem as far as consistency on the Vanderbilt program, those are very telling issues. And you're talking about a guy in Jerry Stackhouse that was a 3rd overall pick in 95. He's a 2-time All-Star, first-team All-Rookie team, McDonald's All-American, for goodness sake. So you would think that his experience on the hardwood would translate to being able to communicate what it takes to actually be a good collegiate player. Where do you think that the breaking communication or even getting these kids lined up in the right position mindset comes from? Where do you think that the gap is between these guys?
The record of NBA guys as college coaches is pretty bad. Now, there's some guys that have made it work for times. Penny Hardaway's made it work for spells at Memphis. That's fallen apart. You've seen some places where it was a total disaster, like Kenny Payne at Louisville. You've seen some guys like maybe Damon Stoudemire at Georgia Tech, who's beat some good teams, and maybe he's got a chance. But for the most part, Chris Mullen being another one, these things just don't work. I think they're used to a different type of lifestyle. I don't think they're used to the grind that it takes in recruiting and flipping in the portal and all those things. I don't think the hours that he's put in have been a lot. It's not helped his cause that he's been seen on the golf course a lot in Nashville, including game days. Even one time when they had a road trip, there was golfing in town one morning. Those things, I mean, you got a lot of boosters in town who are wealthy and see him out and about at those places. He's not on campus a lot. I'm not saying he's not working at other times to maybe do game prep elsewhere, but the perception that that's a problem has been an issue, and certainly you can see that that's not playing out very well for him this year.
Chris, I'm seeing some consistency when it comes to the struggles that both the football and basketball programs are having at Vanderbilt. What do you think it is about Vanderbilt athletics that basically hinders these 2 programs from being competitive in the SEC?
Well, I think you go back to 20 years ago when they pulled the athletic department out and disbanded it, and they did have a quote-unquote athletic director in a sense. It wasn't that entitled. They did have somebody over athletics, but from that point in time on, they're not really looking for an athletic director. They're looking for a vice chancellor who runs athletics. There's about 30 vice chancellors at Vanderbilt. They're all very like-minded. Winning and losing are just one thing on a list of things. How you look, how you portray yourself, how you speak, those are all important things. And winning is a factor, but it's not the factor that it is everywhere else. That's been the case for 20 years now. They have gone and hired more people who, instead of knowing athletics, are more like-minded. A lot of their programs are either in the ditch or trying to crawl out of the ditch right now. They are very set in their ways of doing things the way they want to do them with their people. They want it to be a university top-down mindset, and I think until they're willing to change on that, it's going to be hard for them to succeed.
Chris Lee of Southeastern 14 on YouTube and Vanderbilt.rivals.com, our guest. Chris, on the way out, as you look around the entire SEC, you guys do a great job of covering the entire league at Southeastern 14 and love following your work. From the league-wide point of view, who's got the inside track as you see it to the SEC regular season championship right now, and what will it take for that Tennessee team that looked so good on Saturday to make up that game on Alabama, aside from, I guess, the simple answer, just beating Alabama on the road in a few weeks?
Well, the easy answer, and I'll try to pull up standings because part of it is what you've done now and part of it is where you are. I think Alabama is a game in front of everybody else.
Correct.
Now, if you're asking me who's got the inside track to win and who the best team is, I would give you different answers. We just had in fact, I just finished up before you guys had me on We just are putting out our power rankings. We had a long debate at number one. I've had Tennessee number one for, 2 months, maybe almost 3 at this point. I got outvoted this week. I'll just leave it that way. And I think you go head-to-head, Tennessee beat Alabama by 20 points a notch. So now look, I believe there's a rematch coming in Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double-check the
2
schedule
weeks.
that there is. That may be a different outcome. We've seen that in the SEC. I think, to me, Alabama may end up winning this thing because it's got a game lead, but to me, I think Tennessee's the most complete team. I think Alabama's maybe the best offensive team in the country. Tennessee just is good offensively and has been elite defensively. Maybe not quite up to the standard that Tennessee was a year ago or 2 years ago, but that's an awfully high standard. I think Tennessee's the most complete team in the league. I think Auburn took a big hit this weekend, potentially losing Jalen Williams. They have really struggled with consistency lately. I've never seen a 4-game stretch like Auburn just had with the wild, bizarre shifts and outcomes, and them looking unbeatable one day and more than mortal the next. To me, it's those 3 teams. I think South Carolina was up there in terms of wins and losses. I never bought they were on par with the rest of those teams, really. That started to show, and I think everybody else has dug too big of a hole. Although, if you want a sleeper team, look out for Florida. I think they're really good. And they've got a lot of winnable games coming up, including 2 against Vandy.
Chris Lee has been our guest. Really good stuff talking Vanderbilt hoops and SEC hoops. Subscribe to the Southeastern 14 YouTube channel. It is great stuff there for any SEC fan. Chris, we really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. There he is, Chris Lee, explaining the intricacies of why the Vanderbilt problem with Jerry Stackhouse is a bit more complicated than perhaps it looks on the surface. Really good stuff there from Chris. We can react to coming up next. Final call for phone calls at 615-737-1045 as we wrap up the show coming up next. Wrapping up the show on a Monday morning edition of RKW. We are brewed up by 8th and Roast, 615-737-1045, the final call for phone calls. Appreciate Grant Ramey and Chris Lee for joining us this morning. If you missed either of those conversations, you can find them wherever you download podcasts. Search for Ramon, Kayla, and Will, and they are right there for your listening pleasure in a matter of minutes. With Brad Hopkins and Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. Brad, we've got one more day with you. We've now confirmed that we have one more day with you, and I will no longer try to run you off anymore.
I'm about to say, you're not getting rid of me that easy.
I thought he was joking when he was giving you the eye, when you were like, and Ramon will be back out of the closet tomorrow, in terms of Brad locked him in there, but...
Nope, he ain't getting out just yet.
Yeah, he's got one more day.
He's filling up that closet, too. He's so
sure
tall.
does.
I know.
So it's funny, yesterday, LeBron James, speaking to the media before the NBA All-Star Game, says that he is 50-50 on whether or not he will announce his retirement before his last season and have a retirement tour, or if he'll just retire after the season's over and be done with it. I find that completely hard to believe.
How receptive do you think other fan bases will be to LeBron coming? Now, I will admit it. I was thinking about going to see the Hawks, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest ticket that the Hawks have is the Lakers when they come to town, of course.
Right.
So I just wonder how receptive other fan bases would be to the LeBron James farewell tour.
I would imagine that Adam Silver will ask LeBron to please announce it before the season. That way, the league has many more eyeballs on it, and people like me who don't watch the NBA at all are more inclined to watch his last game at insert city here, and tickets to Grizzlies and Lakers in LeBron James's retirement year are maybe triple what they would be otherwise. Knowing him, though, and how much that guy, and I like LeBron, don't get me wrong, I'm not a hater at all of him, but I can even admit that he loves the spotlight and he loves the attention. That guy will 100% have a retirement tour. 100%.
Well, you just mentioned the Grizzlies and Lakers playing each other for the last time with LeBron James in a Lakers jersey, and automatically my eyes perked up like, I'd probably go see that.
Yeah,
I guarantee you
100%.
there. And I'm not a Lakers fan by any stretch. My brother, on the other hand, if you're listening, oh my God, stop it. But I would definitely go down there and watch that game just because it's the last time you're going to see LeBron on the court.
In 2016, me and a bunch of high school buddies got tickets to go see Grizzlies Cavs when LeBron was still on that big three. We bought the tickets on, I believe, a Thursday afternoon. This would have been, I think, Christmas break of my freshman or sophomore year at Tennessee. I think it was my freshman year. And we bought Grizzlies Cavs tickets. And then 12 hours after we bought the tickets, it was announced that it was load management for all three of the big three. And we sat on the top row of the FedEx Forum for, I believe, $50 apiece. Those tickets were $2 after that announcement was made, and we bought them for $50.
It's crazy. Like, that's the thing. The load management, man, even if you want to go see a great player, you're not guaranteed to see that player on any given night. But I will say about LeBron James, because I don't think I understood just what he means to the league until I covered him up when I was in Columbus and they went on their run in Cleveland, obviously, and won the NBA title. Just how crazy he is as a figure in the NBA. And clearly that was in Cleveland, and that's where he's from, and he came back to the Cavs. But just overall, like, whether you like him or not, you're talking about him. And I think the NBA is a league that's built on polarizing figures and figures that are very out there, right? And kind of about themselves and like being in the spotlight. That's what the NBA is. It's different from the NFL and the MLB. So not having a guy like that is going to be different. And whether it happens next year or 2 years from now, it will be interesting to see how it's talked about without a guy like LeBron James. But then again, I'm sure he'll join Charles Barkley and those guys and be right up there on the podium with the broadcasting side of things.
Well, he's also got a production company as well,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
movies and stuff.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know that he just simply sticks around basketball because there's so many different layers to
And
who
he's
LeBron
shown
is.
that. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But, I think that you're right, 1,000%, Kayla, in that NBA's effect to the fan base is a lot different than the NFL's effect. If you're talking about a guy that plays both ends of the floor, offense and defense, they're very visible. There's courtside seats to where you can actually reach out and touch these guys. If starting linebacker is not in the lineup that week, it's not going to affect the ticket prices. Like you just mentioned,
Right.
Will, if you see the star that you want to see is not going to be in the lineup for those 3 games that he might be in town or even around, you're not going to go spend that money on that game. So their effect is a lot different than in the NFL. Now, if you're talking about quarterback, that's different because we see how what kind of effect the quarterback not being in the lineup has on any NFL offense, but it's just not the same, like you mentioned, Kayla.
Are we going to get to a point where all-star games just don't exist anymore?
No, they're not. They'll exist. It's just it's not the All-Star game. It's called the All-Star Games.
I know that's what Stephen A. Smith has called for on ESPN this morning, from what I've seen on Twitter, is that the All-Star game should just be abolished, is what he said on First Take this morning. It is a uniquely American idea, All-Star games.
Yeah.
Like, those don't happen in other countries other than, I think Japan has a J-League All-Star soccer game against some European club the way MLS does it here. Like, there's no other precedent for, like, English Premier League soccer all-stars playing each other. Like, this is something that we do that the rest of the world doesn't really do nearly as much.
I think it's a lot of appreciation, too, for fans to be able to have that opportunity to, see these guys for the first time, maybe because they're not able to, travel around and watch games. And maybe it's like one of those years that's like, we're going to Orlando. We're going to watch the NFL, games or whatever they call it now in terms of the Pro Bowl. I think it's more so now suited for the fans more than anything. But could they possibly do that where these guys aren't playing in actual games and still being able to get, that fan appreciation?
There is an all-star game in both football and basketball. It's called the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the all-stars, the teams, the guys that are playing the best that year are playing on teams that are competing against one another in the game type fashion that we're talking about. But in these instances where they take over a city in the middle of the season, like Indianapolis, or for the NFL, Orlando, it's not recognized in the same form or fashion because they're not competing against one another like you would be for a championship. You're just showing how good I am at the sport I'm actually participating in. So I would say a skills competition or games featuring a bevy of different talents that these athletes can show you is just as attractive. You just have to change your mindset into what you're watching.
Right.
These guys aren't going to line up and play defense against one another like they would be if they were competing for a championship. You wouldn't, and nor would you expect them to, because it would affect their ability to win championships. If I went out there and played in an all-star game and got myself hurt, you'd be ticked off because you need me for the playoffs.
It's interesting. I'm almost more interested in NFL players doing a basketball all-star game and basketball players playing flag football as their all-star game.
That actually might be fun.
You get those guys playing their other sport, then I would tune in.
I don't want to see Wemby with a flag and a flag.
Him mossing Nate Robinson.
Right.
Wouldn't be hard to do. Oh my God. Back at it again tomorrow morning with Brad Hopkins in studio. We'll have Austin Price. We'll have Ron Slay. We'll have you as well. We'll be here talking about many of these same things and whatever else happens. Big day in the NFL. We'll have all of the reaction coming up tomorrow morning, 6 to 10. That's your RKW Tuesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.